Game, begin.
Hello and welcome to episode 46 of the Spike Colony podcast. I'm here with the freshest Maine lobster in all the land, Michael J. Flores.
I will accept a lot of nicknames. I don't know where this one's coming from. I'm from the sea. I have a red shell. I don't know how did I get the freshest Maine lobster?
I didn't really think it through that much. I identify more with the crab, and crab rolls, my opinion, slightly better deal for, mostly the same flavor. Like, if we're talking crab versus lobster, it's like ridiculous that lobster is so much more expensive than crab because both are delicious. I'm not going to say one's better than the other, but it's like they're in the same league, they're like the same kind of experience, and crab is just like much less expensive. There's a lobster place that's down the street from Endless Life Brewing where we have regular tournaments and meetups, and the lobster roll is like $30 and the crab roll is like $20, and I'm just like, well, give me the crab roll all day.
So you're advocating for the upcoming North American Pre-Modern Championships to be renamed Discount Crab Con?
It's not discount. You're paying full price for the crab. It's just crab is just cheaper than lobster. But if it's crab con, I'm down because lobster rolls are expensive. They are delicious. Don't get me wrong. You wouldn't know given your carb fasting situation, but
I'm eating raspberries in front of you.
That's not a carb. That's just sugar. I guess the sugar is a carb.
So berries have like no calories. Like you can just eat barrels.
You just eat infinite berries.
Infinite berries. It's all fiber.
Okay, so mayo or butter on your lobster roll then.
So I was gonna say, Lanny Huang, you heard it here first, wants to replace beautiful Lobster Con with, I guess, a bunch of new bordered cards slathered in mayonnaise. Because he wants Discount Crab Con.
The lobster rolls at LobsterCon are cold lobster rolls. They are mayo.
I'm just saying, I get it. I'm the freshest Maine lobster. You can be a crab, and you're also very crabby. That's the thing.
I am a little bit crabby. We had a horrific tournament, combined record of 4-6 last weekend at the 1K. The wheels fell off the Spike Colony top 8 train.
In my defense, I probably punted against Kaplan. And B, so many mistakes in game 3. And I had never played the deck except for at Andy's testing. But then B, I think the deck is not nearly as good against Dreadnought
as you thought it was.
Because I got 2-0-4-0'd. And so I lost to the eventual winner in round 3.
Yeah, you're playing Mono Blue Tide. You lost to Dreadnought twice, and you lost to Kaplan on Burn.
Playing Mono Red, but I think I screwed up. First of all, I thought he was on Dreadnought, so I kept a hand that was good against Dreadnought. He was like first turn bauble me, and the thing that was annoying is his baubles always showed my stifle, so I could never catch his Wooded Foothills. And like I would have demolished him if he just let me play into his Wooded Foothills. But like there was that, and then in game 3, he's on the play because I won game 2. I won game 2 fair and square. I didn't even draw all my sideboard cards. I kept a hand that was 1 island but 3 blasts and a chill, and I drew a quicksand. I missed my first pull, so I drew a third turn quicksand, played it, and he played a ball lightning. So I could have either quicksanded the ball lightning or used one of my many blasts on it. Instead, I chose to take the ball lightning like a champ so that I could leave my mana open to impulse into a land. Because my plan was to impulse into land, play my third land, and then chill with blast backup. But my impulse missed. Yes. And then my natural draw missed. And I'm just like chill, and he's just like blast.
26 land deck.
Yeah, and then I lost, right? If all I had to do was blast that ball lightning, I probably would have won. And then like mid-game when we were just in top deck mode, I used an actual counter target spell on a Jackal Pup when I had 2 quicksands in play. And I was just like, that's horrible. You also want to get rid of the quicksand. He's a price of progress deck.
Yep.
So and the match was really close. If I'd gotten one more turn, I would have tied comboed him. So like any of those mistakes, I think I probably draw into top 8, but I made a lot of them. Obviously great on Kaplan. He was our host, and he's one of the most consistent performers in the $1,000 scene, specifically at the volleyball court.
Yep, Kaplan just plays. He just wins. He just plays a good deck, wins. So it's one of the best blue-white Dreadnaught players in around, and yeah. You'd say the world, but it's just like you just haven't played. It's just like well, he hasn't played against Europe.
Lanny, you would have probably blasted that ball lightning instead of holding up for the. Because I could.
Yeah. Yes.
I know it's wrong.
Reverse.
In hindsight,
philosophy of fire. Convert your cards into life points. I was just like gain 6. I might have quicksanded if my line was to impulse for a land. I would have quicksanded. If you're okay, so. No, you were on the draw. You were on the draw. Yeah, you're on the draw. So okay. No, never mind. So I would have blasted the ball lightning.
Or you just hope for it.
Well, if you miss on the land, then you impulse to hit your land, and then you have like blast. Unless that was your only blast. But it still just doesn't matter.
I had 3 blasts in my opener.
I mean,
that's why I kept the hand.
How do you feel when you're the burn player and your opponent allows you to connect with ball lightning?
I don't think I've ever lost a game.
Yeah. So.
I guess, but I was just like, I'm going to lock the game out because I played from the other side of this matchup. I played on both sides of this matchup when the blue player has chill and like a handful of counters, but you just can't. He had no board presence, right?
Yeah, you were trying to. Your objective was different. The burn player's objective was connect with ball laning, and your objective was just like protected chill on the battlefield because you just know how good it is. And I think it's like interesting because. Let's just calculate. Let's just figure out the range on this. So, your impulse, you didn't consider that your impulse might miss on land, and that is definitely like the bottom out situation. But like, if you blast, like, I don't know, like, isn't it just the same?
I still have more blasts.
Aren't you
That's
just
the sad part?
The thing that's interesting. This is like an interesting thing. Is like you're just in the same spot. So say you blast the ball lightning. Then you just put yourself in the exact same spot the next turn, and you get to take the same line the next turn. So you time lock your burn opponent, you just duress them, right? And then you just rerun that turn, and then you get a second stab at chill with blast backup because nothing's changed. They haven't added to the battlefield. They just get one more land, right?
I was just danger of cool things on that one, and so I think
you like top rope like suplex, like you like the spin move. You like the ladder, like jumping off the 20-foot ladder. Like
like my likelihood of losing the game if I play that chill with blast backup is basically 0, right? Because I'm now going to just lock him.
There's when I was growing up, there was like 2 kinds of guys playing Madden. Like there was like the guys that would just like make like 7-yard passes and 6-yard runs. And just like kind of march it up the field. And I was just like, I want to see if I can score in 15 seconds. That's you. You're like, I'm just gonna throw it at the end zone. Like, oh, drop the ball. Who could have seen this coming?
Everyone.
Madden's no fun when you play it like the New England Patriots, though. You gotta throw some long bombs.
I don't know about football.
You don't know anything about football. You don't know about short pass plays and long bombs.
I was a devotee of the Cleveland Browns in the late 1980s, going into the 1990s. This is a famous play in Cleveland, but it's probably lost to the annals of history. Like there've been so many Super Bowls and stuff since then. So the Browns were stymied by the Denver Broncos multiple years in a row. And there was a match, I believe, in 1980, either 1989 or 1990. Browns are up, time's running out. Denver has an insanely long field goal. It's snowing like crazy, like horrible weather conditions. I get down on my knees and I pray to God that they'll miss this field goal because it is a long field goal, right? I watch it, the field goal goes wide, and I'm like, oh my God, the power of prayer. And then I see the ref's hands go up as though it's good. It's to the point that like local songs, there was a song called Bernie Bernie after Bernie Kosar, who was the Heisman Award winning quarterback of the Cleveland Browns. It's like there was a line, Denver left with a fake field goal. You should be the one in the Super Bowl. And so anyway, that shattered a lot of things for me. My love of football and also
Football's
my belief in
over.
the power of prayer.
Yeah. So you lost both football and God in one fell swoop on the same day. It's just like that was like the moment you stopped being a red-blooded American boy. Okay, so it was funny in this last podcast. You were like, we tested Tide versus Dreadnaught, and Dreadnaught won every time, but I still feel like Tide should be ahead. And then you played one match in the 1K, and you were like, lost to Dreadnaught, but I still feel like Tide's
I lost 2-0.
Yeah, and then you were like lost to Dreadnaught again.
Then I was playing for top 8 last round because my opponent beat me and made top 8. I was playing for top 8, even though I lost to Kaplan. I would have drawn in if I had beaten Kaplan. Still playing for top 8, and he 2-0'd me as well.
Yeah.
So my analysis is.
And then you were like, in hindsight, I never lost on the Dreadnaught side during testing Dreadnaught against Tide. and I was like, so why do you think Tide should be Dreadnaught?
Vibes. This is a Lanny vibes test.
It is a Lanny's vibes test. I mean, I'm like looking at this deck, and I'm just like, it's just because you have counter spells, but like your entire like. I mean, I don't know. Powder Keg's pretty good. Powder Keg can get stifled, though.
Powder Keg's good. So, I mean, it also gets Vision Charmed. So, my calculus is Chain of Vapor. And the reason that I was winning from the Dreadnought side was I kept, like, just playing Meddling Mage on Chain of Vapor and then attacking for 10 times.
Right.
Right.
You recognized pretty quickly. Well, there's a few things you recognize. You also recognize that Tide combo just like it's just like nobody cares.
It's not good against Dreadnought really because they have Gush.
Yeah. Or they just like don't need a lot of lands in play.
Well, and also you need like 10 turns of attacking with a 2/1 flying creature to win the game, right? It's like like I mean, I went to time against Andy Vollmer and then I was just like I had to take a turn off of attacking because he might have, been able to stop me, and then I had to like recombo him. You saw that turn where I cast like 2 Parallaxes, and then he just conceded.
Yeah, you cast 1 Parallax Tide to get a second Parallax Tide through. It was like the Orm's Chant Armageddon of Mono Blue.
But yeah, because I can't just try to go for it because if he has interaction, then like we're gonna draw. So, anyway, in sum, mathematically, the Mono Blue deck is, I mean, it's small sample size, but it's the best drawing deck. But I don't know if I would play it at LobsterCon anymore. This 2/3 really.
Yeah, it really took the wind out of your sails.
Punches me in the knee.
There's some interesting stuff about this deck, though.
It feels good when you're playing it. So I mean, I wanted to play my 4 spikes. I mean, let's be honest.
Yeah.
Lan texted me the other night, and he said, "Don't think I didn't notice that you wouldn't play my Oath Replenish deck because it's weak to Sabo's Web, and then you went and played a deck that is
even
really
worse."
Like, don't think I didn't notice that, right? It's like, is this still your LobsterCon pick? And I'm like,
no.
Fuck you.
We're all playing. We're literally all playing Red Green Oath for Replenish. I think we're literally playing Replenish. I'm like, I don't want to like. The problem with having this podcast is I want to talk about what's going on with our pre-LobsterCon, but it's not hard to make a conclusion that like Red Green Oath or Replenish is the shit, and then like Replenish is the blue deck between the two, and like I think that more of our cabal like just likes to think that they're smart and play at instant speed, even though Replenish and Red Green Oath are the same deck. The mana curve is like really high.
In the unlikely event that I'm going to be able to make it, I'm going to be casting Jackal Pup on the first turn, so you can use your first person plural all you want, but I don't know, man. I think that the red deck is great, and it's great against Red Green Oath, and it's great against opponents.
I think it's close. I mean, Red Green Oath just has to draw it's like if red draws the Price of Progress, that's good. But if Red Green Oath draws the Zurin Orb, it beats the Price of Progress, and it also just beats everything.
It also just giant growths for 10.
Yeah. So like the Zurin Orb is like the ultimate trump, right? So like unless the red player somehow sequences Sulfuric Vortex, which costs 3 mana, by the way, against the only Stone Rain, Sphere deck, unless that the red player somehow has Sulfuric Vortex on the battlefield. Like Zuran Orb is just going to take it all the way. I played a test match today, Red Green Oath versus Burn, and I actually lost one game because I drew Zuran Orb, but I only drew 3 lands that game, but I won the game that I had Zuran Orb and any amount of lands. But some cool stuff. If you're the red player, remember to exile your lands to your Grimlava-mancers. That's actually pretty sick if an opponent runs out a early Terravore. I love playing the board out Oath or don't board out Oath game, because
you got to board out at least 2.
I think you got to board out at least 2, and I think that you can just board out all of them and board in Pyroclasm. But I do think, like, it's interesting because if you're the red player, are you going to board out Jackalpup?
I don't know. Might flip a coin.
I know you actually probably. Is this like the single case? You know about randomizing, right? This is like the single case that you should randomize in Magic the Gathering.
So there was a top 8 Honolulu 2006, I want to say. I think it's Max Brocht made top 8 with a Heartbeat of Spring combo deck, which is like Heartbeat of Spring, and then you just make a lot of mana from early. You could probably play a deck like this in pre-modern with Mana Flare instead of Heartbeat of Spring. Make a bunch of mana and then cast a big. I think he had like Maga Trader to Mortals and Invoke the Firemind because there was like not a good Blaze there was Blaze legal, but it sucks. So, but it has like a lot of like really quality kind of card advantage cards that put mana into play, like Kodama's Reach, which there's no analog in pre-modern. It's like a Rampant Growth for 2 sort of thing.
Kodama's Reach was published at the time that most pre-modern players are playing. We know about Kodama.
Okay, so
just don't call it Cultivate.
Sure. So I didn't. I called it Kodama's Reach. So Brock played this deck, and he had this transformational sideboard, which is like full of like 5/5s for 4, Maloku the Clouded Mirror, stuff like that. And Randy Buehler said that this was the only case he could think of in the history of Magic that you're worse off knowing what's in your opponent's sideboard. Because the deck is so polarized different, right? Like he's just literally.
This is like a straight up poker like situation of just like their opponent having a polarized range. All nuts are all bluffs, and you have to like play against that. Yeah,
but like he has like literally like a 3rd turn kill off of early harvest on one end of the range, and then he's just a better grinding deck than like, and he can out. The other thing that's crazy is like one of the tutor cards in the format was like basically a split card. You could counter a sorcery or instant, or you could tutor for 3. That was like one of the cards in his deck. And so which would get like the early harvest or would get like the Heartbeat of Spring. So literally he could play like this sort of counter slivery game where he's like 5/5 for 4 with 8 counterspells, which is basically capability of out countering a counterspell deck of the era. Or he could just race beatdown decks, and like it's almost better. Like Randy's thesis was it was better to not know, right? And then you could play focused because like we played.
But you would always get bamboozled in game 2 though if you didn't know.
I mean that's what he was doing in the Swiss, right? But like in a top 8 situation, which is a 5-game set, it's I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I talked about this with my Exalted Angel situation in Replenish because it was just kind of like opponents were just like, well, if people know, they're just going to leave in their plowshares, and I'm just like, well, then that's fine. It's just like then they have plowshares against my Replenish deck. It's like, and then if they do know, then I can randomize and I can like look at the clock. For those who don't know, they're sort of like the solved mathematically correct behavior in poker where like you can bet raise or fold, right? And or call raise and fold. And sometimes you can in most spots you should never do the same thing 100% of the time, but we're not machines, so poker players have to find a method to randomize. So one of the ways they do it is that they look at a clock and they say like, oh, if the last digit is odd, then I'll bet, and if it's not, then I'll fold. Or they'll look at a poker chip, and depending on which direction the logo is facing, on a clock face, that's how they'll randomize. So there's like, oh, I should raise 25% of the time here. So I'm just gonna, look at some random thing that, look at the clock. And if it's in the first quadrant, then I'll take that action. So here, like with this transformational sideboard stuff, or like whether or not you should bring it in, really, I mean, could conceivably apply, because you can't do the same thing always, right? So if I have access to transformation, if I have access to my Exalted Angel thing, maybe I shouldn't always do it against certain decks, right? Because maybe those decks will have plowshares and can they can exploit my angel exploitation, because the angel thing is already like is trying to exploit my opponent's strategy. But if you randomize, if you flip a coin or look at the clock or something like that, you can never be effectively predictable, and then your opponent is forced to randomize too. It's kind of funny.
Mike Turian, who, I mean, it's been a long time since Mike Turian was a Pro Tour player, but he obviously has won 2 Pro Tours, and he was lauded as maybe the best beatdown player of all time, maybe the best limited player of all time. And he retired before the pre-modern era was over. I was rooming with him during the Mirrodin era when he was already working at WotC. But he once wrote an article about playing this. It's an Odyssey card. It's G for a 1/2 vanilla, and he said he would like often play it. It's like not very good, but how it always made his decks better. And he had this concept back at this point about like whether or not he would attack his like 2/2 into your 2/2.
Yeah. This whether famous like you're talking about like a limited environment where both players have a bear, and you're the attacker, and your opponent has open mana. And should you attack?
And his whole, and I didn't understand at the time. It's just like you can't do the same thing all the time.
Yeah, you can't always attack, and you can't always not attack.
So he's and the other thing was about playing this like 1/2 for 1. I think it's like some kind of druid or whatever. And he had like this litany of reasons why he played it and always made his deck better, but you wouldn't play 2. And
just like you wouldn't play 2 Swords of Plowshare.
you would play exactly 2. So after that happened, I watched the finals of Flippy against Rich for the monthly. For those who don't know, Rich won.
Yep, Rich was playing Replenish with 2 Swords of Plowshares, and Flippy was playing his signature blue-white Flippy Still deck.
So how long have we been recording? Like half an hour already?
No, 22 minutes.
It's 22 minutes. So we should start on the decks. So we have an ambitious task today, which is we're going to go through basically all the decks and make the case or not the case for LobsterCon, starting from the bottom of the barrel.
Yeah, we'll say make the case for and against bringing it to LobsterCon, or for our European listeners, the European Championships, which will be happening on exactly the same day.
Yeah. So let's start at the bottom of the barrel, which is Cyberpunker's Survival Madness deck. This build is 19 creatures, including 3 Arrogant Worms, 1 Gilded Drake, 2 Waterfront Bouncer, 1 Wonder.
I haven't updated this specific Cyberpunker list recently, but it's Survival Madness with the red sideboard plan of bringing in Cave-ins and Pyrokinesis in order to combat Goblins and Elves.
But Lanny, this deck has only a single City of Brass. How can it cast Cave-in or Pyrokinesis?
Well, you see, first you have 4 Squee Goblin Nabob in your deck.
Oh, do you?
And 4 additional Survival of the Fittest to put Squee Goblin Nabob into your hand for a total of 8. And then if you're going to bring in 4 Pyrokinesis and 2 Cave-in, then you'll have 14 red cards.
You can discard a Cave-in to a Cave-in.
Yeah,
that's a thing.
Reaching the absolute bare minimum of red cards that you would even begin to consider having
before playing a single
pitch card. But you got to hand it to Stan. He was like, I literally can't beat the these decks, and he's tried to splash. He's splashed a mountain in the past. He's splashed plains in the past, and he has decided
Plains for what, Swords to Plowshares?
Yeah. He's played like a sort of
that is a tough way to do it.
Couple meddling mages hanging out, but yeah. Ultimately decided, you know what? Let's just do Cave and Pyrokinesis. Case for this deck: Survival Elves is not around recently. I don't think it should, like, if you're listening to this podcast and when you hear me say this deck is not played a lot, that's different than underplayed. I think Survival Elves like deserves its relative unpopularity, despite the fact that I have been biorhythmed out of my game.
I mean, I disagree.
Out of my match multiple times.
Elves is higher up on this list. We can talk about it later.
Yeah, okay.
I think Elves is quite good. So case against this deck. This is not the kind of deck I would play ever in a tournament that I cared about winning. For multiple reasons. I am vehemently against playing the card City of Brass, unless I'm playing a combo deck, typically. That's one of the reasons why I probably didn't glom onto Growatog, despite my close association with you, who have showed me over and over again how viable Growatog is. B, like, this mana is a joke, right? Like, you need your first land to be island, and then all subsequent lands to be forest. That's basically how the deck works. Right, and I don't know. You have Mycosis.
Yeah, so highlighting the 4 days in this list. Yeah,
like Wasteland is so bad in this deck. Like City of Brass is, it's like, I hate losing the game before I've shuffled up and dealt a single card, and I feel like,
and that's how your opponents are gonna feel when you Wasteland days them out.
I feel like, I mean, obviously Cyberpunker has done what Cyberpunker does with this deck month in and month out. I have yet to see a single soul who's not Cyberpunker putting up consistent results with it, at the highest levels. And I mean, to me, this is, I've written so many articles about the kinds of decks I would never play in a tournament that I cared about, and this is just emblematic of that. Like, this deck also mulligans horribly. Right, like,
that's great. You just mulligan to Careful Study double squee, and then you're off to the races.
Then you're even.
Yeah,
right. You're like, I'm even, except for the 2 cards that I just drew were squee.
Yeah, you're actually behind because you don't cash in the squee until the second time that you pitch it. Right, so like the first time you pitch it, it just comes back to your hand. So if it was anything and you don't do anything with it, like, then that's the same thing as discarding whatever card it would have been. So you need to loot the squee twice before it starts paying you.
And so, if you don't have Wild Mongrel or Survival of the Fittest on the second turn, I mean, I guess you just have to mulligan to Wild Mongrel or Survival of the Fittest. Like, your deck literally does nothing. It is stone the worst deck in the entire room if you don't have one of those 2 cards on the second turn. On balance, the Mono Blue Tide deck can never beat this deck. Like, this deck annihilates Mono Blue Tide in a merciless fashion.
Yeah. So, Survival Madness, for those who aren't familiar with it, is basically, your father's, your grandfather's Boomer Madness deck with 4 Survival of the Fittest added. This allows you to play Squee Goblin Nabob, and since you're pretty hyped about looting Squee Goblin Nabob with your Careful Studies and Frantic Searches, you just play a full 4. So, it's basically just the Squee deck that allows you to have your mongrel be gigantic every turn thanks to Squee.
I do love that. I do love, like, it's just always 5/5.
Yeah. Have unlimited waterfront bouncer triggers. You have the waterfront bouncer.
It's ambitious that you think the waterfront bouncer untaps without summoning sickness.
Yeah. Well, it happens every now and then. You have the waterfront bouncer Gilded Drake combo, which is a lock against certain
against decks
Terravore decks.
Literally no interaction.
No removal decks. But I mean, if you look at it, like, so Pyroclasm isn't good against the Madness deck, right? Because it only gets Waterfront Bouncer and unactivated Basking Rootwalla, and you'll have to discard a card to your Wild Mongrel, right? But like, the red-green oath deck doesn't have ways to remove Waterfront Bouncer besides Pyroclasm. So how many Pyroclasm are you going to have post-board if you can't?
Don't you just go over the top, like have a 10/10 and attack them with it?
Well, no, it's just Gilded Drake. So you Drake the you Drake the Terravore, you bounce the Drake, and then you get all the Terravore.
Your case for this deck is that you think that this deck is a good game against red-green oath?
No, it only has 22 lands. And like I said, red-green oath destroys every deck that has 20. Well, I guess I said 21 lands and under, but some of these are wastelands, which are very susceptible to your opponent's wastelands. But I can see this deck. Like the basic problem is that if your only answer to oath is Waterfront Bouncer, you're in trouble. So like you need survival, and then you're bored in these like 2 naturalized, 1 Reverend Silence, 1 Tranquil Domain, and it's just kind of like, you know, your opponent's first order stuff is better than your second order stuff, basically, and your first order stuff gets answered by your opponent's first order.
Your
stuff.
Reverend Silence only works if you have a forest in play, which there are 5.
Which there's 5. You've got 5. It's perfect. It's fine.
Your opponent has 8 Thermokarst.
That's also true. So you're not casting Reverend Silence. You're probably not boarding it in. So yeah, I don't think this is favored against Red Green Oath. I think it can beat Red Green Oath. Like I think if you have Survival of the Fittest and they don't have Naturalize and they have Oath and you don't have Naturalize, you have Waterfront Bouncer, which is cool. And other than that, like Arrogant Worm rules the battlefield, you know?
I could see this deck beating Replenish though.
This deck is quite good against Replenish with 4 days, 4 counterspell, and a lot of pressure. And Reverend Silence, just in case. Just in case the tide isn't at all involved.
Reverend Silence is a poo emoji.
We're not playing Reverend Silence. We're going to play Tranquil Domain. We're going to play 2 Tranquil Domain, 2 Naturalized. It's fine. We'll figure it out. But yeah, that's Survival Madness. It's a pretty sweet deck from like a... So like it's an aggro deck that gets to play at instant speed. It's got the grindy aspect from Survival of the Fittest, but it's not over leveraged on Survival of the Fittest, where it's like playing a bunch of like janky creatures that like if you draw them naturally but you don't draw survival, you're super sad to see. Same thing with Squee. It's like, okay, well I've got 4 Squee, like those are kind of janky, but I have so many ways to use my Squee. So I like that this deck is just sort of like C+ across the board in all of its game plans. Because, you know... I mean,
Wild Mongrel with a handful of Squee is not C+. That is so hard to beat for some decks.
Okay, so it's C+, B- split. Like, all I'm saying is that this deck doesn't... like, maybe this is the mid-range deck that I was trying to talk about last podcast, where I was just like, this deck makes a good impression of being an aggressive deck and a good impression of being a grindy, like, inevitability deck, and a slightly good impression of being a 4 counterspell, you know, control deck. It just doesn't have any removal besides sideboard cave-in. But yeah, that's Survival Madness.
If this deck wasn't forced to play all these cave-ins and pyrokinesis, this deck could be so good in terms of like the flexibility of its sideboard.
Literally just Force of Will, man. I guess Force of Will Brainstorm. Roland Chang, when he played Blue-Green Madness in the 2006 Legacy Champs, had 4 Force of Will, 4 Brainstorm. And he won, you know, he just crushed. And Goblins was in that metagame, so... you know,
I mean, this deck is, I think, like you said about like a mid-range type deck, you can just go offense, right? If you're like early Wild Mongrel that sticks and you don't get lackied on the first turn, you can just race somebody, right? You're just like turn 3 Arrogant Worm in, you know, Wonder that's just like a bazillion damage, probably kill somebody on turn 5.
And I also want to highlight that while this deck does get choked on green mana for sure, we're talking about 9 green sources that you're or 10 green sources that you're using Careful Study, Frantic Search to find. You know, the whole point of Survival in the Fittest in this deck is not to go off on big survival chains. It's just to get one creature you can cast with blue mana a turn. So you need 2 green in play. I mean, you do kind of need 2 green mana in play.
Please tell me more about.
And then you have to activate Basking Rolla.
The other survival decks that we look at have like 1 Squee, sometimes 2. This is a 4 Squee Goblin.
You're just drawing a Squee. Okay. Add more green mana to this deck. You'll be golden. Probably cut the Wastelands.
Like, what do you mean by golden exactly?
Probably cut the Wastelands for more City of Brass. I'm going to skip over Mono White Control. Mono White Control has kind of died down. Nothing too exciting about this deck these days. And it's basically just the black-white control deck. It's like an Eternal Engine, Decree of Justice, Eternal Dragon, Decree of Justice, big mana engine deck that uses artifact mana that, has...
I played a version of this deck at $1,000 tournament a few months ago. I was demolished by black-white and also by Landy Hoth.
Yep, not that exciting. Not a great pick for the metagame. Unclear to me if it really has a niche. Let's talk about Flint's. I have Doomed Hermit here, but let's just talk about Angry Hermit. Let's talk about the deck that won the 2022 national champ.
You mean the deck that I went 1-1 against in that?
Yeah.
I actually love the Doomsday version. I love the Plan C here. Actually, I think we should call it Plan 3. In the immortal words of Scott Summers, Cyclops. So they're trying so hard to make Scott Summers cool. How do you feel about Scott Summers? Everyone thinks he's like this lame nerd.
He's a lame nerd, yeah.
Yeah, they're trying to make him cool.
He has to wear glasses all the time. It's like ridiculous.
And so like there's this scene recently where
like why not just contact lenses? I mean, come on.
So they're like, oh, is that Plan B? And Scott Summers says, we prefer to call it Plan 2. Plan B presupposes that we only have 26. Right? And I'm like, that's kind of a great line. Right? So this deck is great. I think severely underplayed is where I would lump this deck. Rich Shea and I were talking about it at LobsterCon last year, actually, and he pointed something out to me that I did not realize when we were having this conversation. This is like a legit Dreadnaught deck. So when we think about Dreadnaught decks, we just think typically of mono blue or blue-white Dreadnought decks. This deck has like more or less. I mean, obviously, Doomed Hermit has fewer stifles, right?
Correct.
Then
the LobsterCon winning list had 4 Vision Charm, 2 Stifle, and this list had to give up some Stifles so that I could
to make room for Doomsday.
Yeah.
But like this deck is mostly just a legit Dreadnought deck, and that's a heck of a plan. We'll go with Plan 3.
Yeah.
All right. So this deck's got an amazing Plan A, right, which is just to kill you on turn 3. It can kill you on turn 4 in an almost non-interactive way, right? If you don't have like library destruction and you can't just deal 10 damage to your opponent in one turn, you're just dead to Doomsday a lot of the time. All right, so for those who don't know, the Doomsday combo in this deck is to play Doomsday, make your library. It depends on what cards you have in hand, right? So, but you basically just use Vision Charm or potentially Breakthrough to put 2 or 3 Phyrexian Dreadnoughts into your graveyard, and then cast Shallow Grave on your Sutured Ghoul all in one turn.
Yeah, exactly. You Doomsday and you cast your pile is 4 Dreadnoughts and your pile is 2 Dreadnoughts, a Reanimate, and a Sutured Ghoul and a Breakthrough. So you draw the Breakthrough. You cast Breakthrough, X equals 1. You draw the rest of your library containing all those Dreadnoughts and the Reanimate. And then, the pile is 2 Dreadnoughts, Dragon's Breath, Sutured Ghoul, Reanimate.
No, why do you need Dragon's Breath?
Because the Sutured Ghoul needs haste. You use Shallow Grave. All right, so you see 4 mana. So that's what it is. So you need 4 mana. So it's Breakthrough, X equals 1. Shallow Grave or Sutured Ghoul, exiling the Dreadnoughts. I guess we should go all the way back. This is a Hermit Druid deck. Hermit Druid puts your library into the graveyard because you have no basic lands in it. Once your library is in your graveyard, you shuffle back a couple Reanimates or a couple Shallow Graves, and then you use the Shallow Graves or Reanimates to put a Sutured Ghoul into play, exiling Phyrexian Dreadnoughts, making it gigantic and hasty and tramply and killing your opponent. So we skip the Reanimates here because we have the Doomsday plan. So now we're slightly slower because we can't go 1 mana Reanimate with the help of Dragon's Breath. But,
Lotus Petal then.
But the original plays Lotus Petal. Basically the fastest the original could go off is Lotus Petal, Hermit Druid, activate Reanimate. So now you needed to go Lotus Petal, Hermit Druid, activate another Lotus Petal, Shallow Grave. But that's neither here nor there. The secondary combo, is this Dreadnought, this Doomsday line we talked about, and then of course because your deck contains Phyrexian Dreadnought, why not have some Vision Charm?
Because the Vision Charms are already synergistic with the Doomsday plan.
I mean, if Doomsday lets you grab like anything though, right? So you always grab Breakthrough.
No, you don't. So it depends it depends what you have in hand.
Yeah, if you randomly have a Shallow Grave in hand, you can.
If you have either a Shallow Grave or a Vision Charm, you're one turn faster than the Breakthrough combo that you said, because you just all you do is just set up your deck so that you draw a Shallow Grave if you have a Vision Charm, or you draw a Vision Charm if you have a Shallow Grave, and then you Vision Charm the other cards, put them all into your graveyard, and then Shallow Grave.
Well, it's the same speed.
So it's only 3 mana. And you have
instead of 4 mana,
instead of 4 mana, and you have a slightly larger Sutured Ghoul as well.
So it gives you outs to combo for 3 mana, larger Sutured Ghoul in case your opponent has a blocker for your 24/24. The other sort of interesting caveat is that if you execute the Hermit line and your opponent has a Terravore in play, very common creature in pre-modern, you have 20 lands.
Ruh-roh, Raggy.
So that Terravore is a 20/20, so you better make a 40/40 Sutured Ghoul. You do have that capacity with all 4 Phyrexian Dreadnaughts and
throw in some Hermit
three more Hermit Druids. But obviously watch out if your opponent has put any extra lands besides you're not going to put 20 in, right? Because you'll have some in play, but just be mindful of that. Artie has been working on a version of Breakfast that exiles its own Terravores. So if you exile a Terravore to Sutured Ghoul sees the Terravore power toughness as all the lands. So you only need.
He won a Misty tournament.
Yeah, he won or topped. I don't know.
I think.
One, yeah. So awesome stuff. This deck is not good against Sphere Resistance and Wasteland Port, and
never ever beats the red deck.
And
this is among the worst decks in the format against Price of Progress.
Well, it used to be viable to let your Hermit Druid die and then Shallow Grave your Hermit Druid and then rejam, or just go for Dreadnaught combo. So they used to talk about this deck like being very good against red, because you could Dreadnaught combo them, or you could Shallow Grave your Hermit Druid, and both of those lines were super fast and, essentially could race whatever the red deck is doing. Because once again, if you're the red deck, are you going to bring in Overload for your opponent's Overload or Blue Blast for your opponent's Dreadnaught combo when their other combo is just Shallow Grave Hermit Druid?
This is just Max Bracht all over again. The thing I would say about this is I respect all the things that you said. I respect the people who said them. I'm very happy to play against this with the red deck.
Yeah.
All respect in the world.
Some exciting stuff. This deck has 4 Meddling Mage in the sideboard, which we didn't see in the OG. And Meddling Mage is awesome in this type of deck. And the mana really struggles to support it, but find a way. Figure it out, ladies.
What decks is Meddling Mage not awesome in? The Rock? Right? Like, just
decks that don't have blue-white mana.
Yeah.
I think we'll revisit that topic when we talk about Grow talk about Phyrexian Dreadnaught. I actually think that Chris Picula's stock is the lowest that it's ever been, despite the fact that he's still on Wall Street trading his heart out.
I agree, and I think that we might be in some sort of a full circle zone where mono blue Dreadnaught is actually superior to blue white Dreadnought. Because Dreadnought.
Spicy take.
This Meddling Mage is so bad against Oath of Druids.
Yeah. Spicy take. Well, let's definitely talk about that in a bit. So this deck is also bad against Counterspell Meddling Mage decks. So it's bad against Dreadnaught itself. It is not. It's like good against Goblins, but it's not like hyped. It's not like hyped to be like Lackey Wasteland. But generally speaking, you should just be able to combo out Goblins before they have anything to say about that. Not to mention, there is a Hermit Druid Goblins deck.
What?
Yeah.
Why?
I think this is a Costech brew, but it might be a TV Tyrant brew. I think it could be a TV Tyrant brew. TV Tyrant, of course, is the brewer of the mono green Terravore Oath deck since years ago. At this point. But I think he also put together a Goblins deck with no basic lands, 1 copy of Dragon's Breath, 1 copy of Crows and Reclamation, 1 copy of Sutured Ghoul, 1 copy or 2 copies of Reanimate, and then 4 Hermit Druids, and then the rest is just Goblins. So it's like turn 1 Lackey, turn 2 Hermit Druid. Which way, Western man? It's like, so you got the first plow. Do you have the second? Love that. Anyways, you have this behind against burn. I have it. I'll give it even. I'll just play the diplomatic line in the absence of testing. Still great at catching your opponents off guard. Still weirdly confusing for some people.
I've played it one time against an excellent player. I was on the burn side and I won.
Yeah, I've played against. I mean, I think the struggle against Red Green Oath and Dreadnaught is going to hurt it. I think that it probably can sneak it in against replenish, but replenish can abeyance you, which could be good. Or Orm's Chant is even better, right? Because you can't attack. So Orm's Chant beats a few lines. The replenish player can also tide you and stop you from having enough mana, and the replenish player can, of course, just beat you faster than you can beat them. So if you go for a Dreadnaught combo, they can just combo you back, and then you're out. But you've got Ford Duress, Cabal Therapy.
I mean, a lot of replenish's fair cards are actually excellent against this deck. For example, the 2 Swords to Plowshares.
Yeah,
like the exactly 2 Swords to Plowshares.
The 0 to 4, but ideally 2 Swords to Plowshares.
Or like any number of Swords to Plowshares that you would draw against this are excellent.
Yes,
they're good against Hermit Druid, and they're great against either Phyrexian Dreadnought or Suture Ghoul, obviously.
Yeah, and if replenish is pulling up on the number of Tormod's Crypt in the metagame, that is also going to hurt Hermit Druid players for sure.
I still think this deck is excellent and underplayed.
Yeah. I mean, it's going to beat a lot of mopey mid-rangey nonsense. But I think it says something that Flint Espel was specifically the player to win the championship with this deck, and since then nobody has really claimed a even top 8 spot with the same archetype. Shout out to Artie. I mean, I think that maybe is like the one exception, but of course he just went a completely different direction with the breakfast stuff.
I mean, it's a different deck.
Yeah, it's effectively a different deck. So the amount of skill it takes to sort of navigate these combo lines might be reserved for only the creme de la creme. Moving on, we have Hermit Feb. We should probably just say a lot of the same stuff, and then my addendum is that I think that Hermit Feb remains like a deck that like most players just don't know what it does or how to stop it, and so it continues to just do well.
I have both of these decks grouped in the same place mentally in my mind, where I just prefer Doomed Hermit, and the reason I prefer is I think they're very similar incentives. They're like both decks with like a lot of non-basic lands that have multiple lines, and one of which is around Hermit Druid, and then one of which is around something else. But I prefer Doomed Hermit, or Flint's deck is what I used to call it, for the sole reason that it's faster, and that like the Hermit Feb deck. I know that people have this narrative that it's just the best combo deck in the format. Like Fran used to say it was the best combo deck in the format.
Yeah, he doesn't say that anymore. Now everyone just says Replenish is the best combo.
Yeah. So, but people used to have this have this refrain. I think that this deck is almost textbook. The juice is not worth the squeeze. Where like, yeah, it could do all this stuff and that stuff's exciting, but it is a lot of squeeze to get there.
Well, there's only one squee.
Let's move on. I think we're probably in the same place mentally on Hermit Feb.
I don't know if there's anything too interesting here. HFeb is much worse against burn. It's like I have the Shallow Grave deck with the shot against burn. This deck is going to get even more Price of Progress, Pyrokinesis, like just annihilated out, and there's not much you can do about it.
It is also like this deck is very shutdownable, right? If you just destroy all of its survival of the fittest and they don't kill you on the spot, like the deck just kind of doesn't do anything.
Yeah. It's good against the rock though, so we've got that.
I mean, I could tell you from firsthand experience, I lost twice in that tournament in the first round and in the finals. Same players, same deck. It was Hermit Feb. I won a game.
You got one game. You attacked with your 3/3s.
This deck, yeah, a lot of gaps, I think.
I'm not even, maybe the HFeb Cabal has quieted down, but I haven't even heard any buzz from HFeb diehards about the deck recently, which is pretty telling. So either they're planning something big, like they're just like, oh, let's all bring this to LobsterCon. We've got this huge innovation. We're going to put 4 Call the Herd in the sideboard. And just like
That
completely rock LobsterCon. I do think that every deck that has green mana should play maximum Call the Herd in their 75.
Probably in their main deck, like Grow a Dog.
Probably in their main deck.
Now has Call the Herd.
But it is unbelievable. Like, I'm just like Swords of Plowshares, then Oath of Druids, then just Call the Herd, man. Like 3 best cards in Modern.
Blue-green, hear me out. Blue-green, 12-12.
I am in.
Or Call the Herd.
Well, okay, so no werebears.
Let's go!
No werebears because
werebears.
we're exiling our Call the Herd, so it's going to put us under threshold. And also just like, I don't want to... I don't want to play
Spice deck. I had four Nimble Mongoose.
I don't want to play. Well, you had Mental Note in that deck. I don't want to play fetch lands in my otherwise fetchless deck. Anyways, Mono Blue Storm.
Love it.
If you want to beat the Rock once again.
That hurts. It still hurts. I mean, mistakes were made. Starting with registering the Rock.
This deck can never really beat either Burn or Goblins. Like, it can sometimes win like steal game 1 against one of those decks, and then we talked about it. I wanted to not play Hydroblast in the sideboard. You have to play a lot of Hydroblast in the sideboard because you just can't beat red.
You're
otherwise
so far behind against their 1-drop.
Yeah, so you get super annihilated by red. This deck is also shaky against specifically blue-white Dreadnaught, but it is quite good as demonstrated on camera against blue-black Dreadnaught or mono-blue Dreadnaught because it can transform into a Brain Freeze control deck. And
is that just because the blue-white deck Meddling Mage's Brain Freeze, or
no, it's because the blue-white deck can Meddling Mage naming Snap. So without Snap is both a ritual and a answer to Meddling Mage and an answer to Firestone Dreadnought. So there's a reason why my sideboard contains 1 Chain of Vapor, 1 Rushing River, 1 Unsummon, and the reason is Meddling Mage. I think that Meddling Mage is the whole package against this deck because it can let you take the offensive by attacking, and it can disrupt by stopping your ritual. The second copy stops Meditate, which can be extremely high leverage, and then it also protects Dreadnought. So Meddling Mage just does everything to this deck, and similarly Grotog I think should be is kind of favored. Grotog has less like free counterspell action, so value Meditate is quite good against Grotog, but in general, Storm quite good. I had a reasonable plan against the red green Oath deck that involved.
And you got punched in the face.
Getting Hercule's Recall. I pulled a game. one out of 3 games both times, so I had a glimmer of hope. But
didn't I 2-0 you when we played at Tau House?
I think I stole one. I either stole one against you or SWB and or both, but like it was just like, okay, Hercule's Recall, deal with the stuff, and then Accumulated Knowledge is like a great card against red green Oath.
Accumulated Knowledge is a great card, full stop. And we're supposed to be talking about the viability and vibes of these decks for LobsterCon. No way you should play this on Friday. You could play it on Saturday, maybe. Right?
Yeah. It's just stay away.
It's easy to play this on Friday.
It's too rough against the red deck. It's too rough against red green Oath. And if your opponent is playing blue white Dreadnought, which we'll talk about later, it's too rough against that. It's just really only good against the Rock and other mopey decks.
But it was
that
so
lose
good
to
against
Meditate.
the Rock.
Yeah. Mono black beatdown. Come on, next. This is just Goblins but worse. It's Goblins with Duress, and if you really love Duress, you should probably just play black red Goblins.
Great against land still.
Yeah, these decks are cool and a fun thing to try out, and fans of Basic Swamp are about it.
But similar thing, right? 0% chance against decks that have Basic Mountain.
Oh, you are really bad against. Yeah, you are horrible against Burn, like atrocious. The Cleric deck might have a slightly better shot because of Cabal Archon and Rotlung Reanimator, but still no.
This deck has literal Wretched Anurid in it.
I mean, Wretched Android goes hard, but yeah, not good against red deck.
Yeah, it goes hard against you. It goes hard against your life total.
Devour combo. I was actually just thinking about this the other day because Devour combo, the only deck that can profitably run Sabo's Web main deck. It is the antidote.
That is not true. That is not true. There are more than one deck that can profitably run Sabo's Web. For example, Blue-White Dreadnaught, where I replaced the impulses with Sabo's Web. Same thing, you know. Management would like you to tell me the difference between these two pictures. But I'm off this deck. I thought this deck was the bomb because Tom was talking about how great it was. I played this like on my birthday, right? And then you loaned it to me, and I was off it after I didn't win that meetup. I got brained by everything that you could get brained by. This deck is kind of one-dimensional.
It does not have multiple gears. Yeah, that's the problem.
Like it loses randomly to cards that are just in the metagame, right? That's
Engineered Plague chief amongst them.
I mean, Circle of Protection Red is literally a disaster for this deck.
Blue Blast gets you. Stifle sometimes gets you, and it's tough because. Like, I have always advocated for the deck to be an intuition deep analysis deck so that you can outgrind the hate. But Tom is opting for the Fact or Fiction line and the Sabo's Web line, of course. It works when it works. It is a little bit shaky, but I think it's fast enough to compete with
benefits of the deck. It's fast.
Yeah, it's super fast. You can win on turn 3 if you build the deck a certain way. You can win on turn 2. But yeah, Devour. Tom hasn't even been playing it, and others haven't been really excited by it. So
my problem with the deck is just there are so many cards that are just in decks that, like, you know,
yeah,
they stop you.
I mean, this is like a deck that has to play 4 defense grid in the main, like just because it's just so bad against counterspells. And it's just like, there's just nothing you can do. So you're just like, well, this is an artifact at least. So if my opponent doesn't have counterspells, whatever. Stasis is extremely exciting to me. I love Stasis now. I used to think Stasis is basically unplayable. And somehow I'm just like so excited by Stasis. Because if I'm going to play a deck that is really bad if my opponent knows what's going on, like at least it's still like reasonable when my opponent knows what's going on.
So Stasis, excellent against Oath, right?
Well, it doesn't trigger Oath, and it doesn't really like the card Sphere of Resistance that much.
It does not.
But this Stasis list that Chris Roy took to the top 1 of the Massachusetts Quarterly has 24 lands and only 1 Forsaken City to be gobbled up by Wastelands. And it doesn't bother with Black Vice, which is one important thing. So I actually haven't seen this matchup, but Stasis is good against mainlands. Terravor is good. And maybe you just like put one into play, and then you just like wait until until there's 20 combined lands.
Card is just a Felden's Cane.
There's a Stroke of Genius.
Yeah.
And Chris's list had Morphling. His logic was that you would go chain my Stasis, untap a bunch of lands, play Morphling, play Stasis, tap, chain my Stasis again, and eventually kill you with Morphling. I was just like, you need so much mana to make that happen, and 2 Chain of Vapor, which needs to all, like, you need to have 2 Chain of Vapor by the time you have 1 Morphling, and like that's not a guarantee because you have to use the Chain of Vapors because you only have 1 Forsaken City. So I made some tweaks. I was just like, let's just go with the Cane and the Stroke, and let's just do it, just do it the hard way. And then, of course, sideboarding, most of the time you're just going to board in Brain Freeze, and Brain Freeze is going to be a million times better. So much so that I think that you should probably just play Brain Freeze in the main deck, but I haven't put more work into this deck. I'm excited to play a Power Sync in this deck. And I am just generally like this deck is like
3 Impulse and a Hydroblast. That can't be right.
No, I need to fix that actually. So it's probably just there's only 13 cards on the sideboard. So if you're looking at it on my
spikecolony.com.
Yeah, if you're looking at spikecolony.com/tier list, you might see this corrected by the time that things come around.
I hate Stasis. I think that it is a terrible deck, especially if you play the blue-green version with Gaia's Blessing and No Forest with Thawing Glaciers. In all seriousness, I don't think this is a good LobsterCon deck for many of those same reasons that we would invalidate some of the other decks. This deck's pretty bad against Basic Mountain. Their sideboard goes real hard against you.
It's true. Having unlimited targets for a Red Blast is rough. But who knows? I mean,
and you're behind early, and you don't stop being behind. That's really the problem. And they can wait. That's the thing, right? If you don't have something like a Root Maze, which would make their land come into play tapped, and you don't have Black Vice pressuring their life total, they can just wait, and then they can send.
Notably, Chris won a tournament that had like a ton of control. But
one of the best decks against land still.
Yeah.
Excellent against mono blue Tide combo.
Yeah, absolutely.
Not good against red decks, in my opinion. Horrible against elves.
Yeah, well, luckily there's not a lot of elves. White Weenie. The White Weenie deck is very inefficient. I'll just leave it at that. I think I have Denny's version on the tier list. But
you have blue-white Flippy, as far as I can tell.
Yeah, this is blue-white Flippy, but this is Denny's list. So it has
Denny?
Denny McLean. McLean Denny, yeah. It has the one of Predict, which is obviously wishful thinking. It has the one.
I think what you mean by that is the stones.
It has One River Mantra, which has got some people before. But this is better than. It's actually weird. I have this below land still in the tier list, but you know what? I think it's better. It's a better standstill deck than Landstill is. That's for sure.
I no longer have Landstill built, even though that was my LobsterCon deck last year. I have this built instead.
Yeah. It's a cool deck. It like we saw it lose to Goblins. I have defeated it with Burn, so it definitely kind of doesn't pass that first litmus test. It is quite good against Dreadnaught. It is horrible against both Call of the Herd and Oath of Druids, and a lot of decks are going to contain both those cards.
That is a bad combination of cards to be bad against. It is a little disappointing to me. I thought this deck was like one of the solutions, like literally, you know,
the solution,
it's the solution deck, right? You know, oh wow, it's got a great matchup with Dreadnaught, great matchup with Red, great matchup with Goblins. Turns out the matchups with Red and Goblins were a little less great, despite being a Silver Knight worship deck.
Well, here's an interesting question: is Exalted Angel good anymore?
Yeah, it's great.
Is it? Maybe it's not. What if it's not?
I mean, Flippy sided in his extra Exalted Angels in against Rich in the finals, even though Rich thought that he should side out all of his Exalted Angels. So
yeah, I mean, 7 mana for 4 power is not a good deal. But it does let you play at instant speed. I mean, like the back end 4 is like semi-free, but like Rich is never not going to cast a spell that you want to do something about on his turn as the replenish player. But thinking broadly, Exalted Angel is good against Goblins if you can get it. That's never guaranteed. It is good against Burn if you can get it, which you effectively never will.
You can't. You need it at 6, and even if you have it at 6, they might just 2-spell it.
Exactly, yeah. Or they might have, some maniac might have Sulfuric Vortex in play.
Then it just doesn't matter.
It is good against blue-white Dreadnaught if you have other stuff going on.
It doesn't even necessarily win the race.
Well, no, it just puts a lot of pressure on them, right? So it just needs to basically, once you have Exalted Angel in play, your opponent has to combo that turn, right? Or kill the angel. And so I like it for that purpose. But other than that, I do find it to be pretty mopey. It's like you stated, it probably isn't good against Replenish. It's just way too slow. Doesn't really feel impactful. And of course, the life total absolutely doesn't matter against Replenish. It's great against the Rock. It's It's fine if your opponent has used all their plowshares on your 2/2s. But if they're a Call the Herd plowshare deck, then they can use elephants to block your 2/2s and plowshares on Angel. So Angel also might be the lowest it's ever been in the format. Apologies to BK, the expensive Angel Master.
Well, okay. I wouldn't vote for this deck. I think that we're probably in the same camp on that.
Yeah, it's hard to. Well, it's just hard to make a case for it. Like, I think it's like a cool deck, but it's, it really does feel like it's got some holes. It's got some gaps, as you mentioned. We've talked about Tide Control a lot. That's the next deck on this list. Mono blue to be specific. No standstills. Let's cut the standstills. You're not playing standstill. And
this
Andy
deck's
Levine
61 cards, I think, right? So cut 2 standstills, add a third factor fiction, done.
Yeah, figure it out. But shout out to Oscar Garcia, who I think got second place in Spanish Nats or something of the sort. This deck is really good against replenish. It apparently loses to Dreadnought though. But yeah, I mean, it's one of the few decks.
To be fair, I didn't draw any of my annuls in time.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah. I mean, the case for this deck is that it defeats both red decks. Not handily, but
I lost to one of them playing for top 8.
Good
but
enough.
That was probably on me.
Close
right?
enough.
I could have blasted that ball lightning.
Yeah, it's close enough. It's definitely.
It is so far ahead. Goblins. I can't even. Like, you wouldn't believe me.
It smushes Goblins. I don't believe you, but I believe you. Landstill. I am somehow very excited about Landstill.
Why?
How
many Teferi's response are we going to main deck?
Just, I don't know, 7. The only problem with Landstill is the card Standstill. And the fact that it can't run Call the Herd. And the fact that it can't beat Call the Herd.
It can beat Call the Herd.
It can't really beat Call the Herd. I mean, I guess if you have 2 Mishra's Factories in play, you're like,
Let's
okay.
Just plow it. I mean, this deck is
you can't. No, you can't plow it. You have 4 plows. They have 8 elephants.
This deck is nothing but card advantage.
It actually is not, right? Because Standstill is unplayable. You have to board it out against Red Green Oath. And you kind of have to board it out against a lot. You have to board out some copies against
any deck with a Treetop Village.
Initiative decks, yeah, but most Treetop Village decks. And so you're just like never standstilling. And like one time my opponent like tapped out and cast Standstill, and then I was like, okay, I'll break the Standstill to cast Armageddon. And so that was bad. So cut Standstill. So we're gonna cut Standstill. We are going to
anymore. Now it's
just Blue Eye Control. We're gonna trim Decree of Justice. Decree of Justice is not a good card. Hot take.
It's a great card.
It's a horrible card. 3 copies, it's a horrible card. This Decree of Justice is so inefficient. I just like it's just.
But the deck is designed to operate with Standstill in play, Lanny. Once you're taking Standstill out, all the cards look bad.
Exactly. That's why I'm saying. So we took Standstill out. We're taking Decree of Justice out.
Start this segment by saying you're really excited by Landstill.
Yeah, I'm excited to make these changes. And push the deck from 46 to 49%. All right, that's what I'm excited about.
Canceling Blow. That was one of the first cards that I wanted to play, and then I
no, thank you. No, we're not doing Dismantling Blow. We are adding Kurtar's Desire. We talked about it last podcast, and we're just gonna play 2 Kurtar's Desire. Just take your medicine. I don't know what your hang up is with Kurtar's Desire. Put 2 in your Standstill deck, but once again, it's not Standstill. It's just put 2 in your Blue White Control deck. So we're trimming Decree of Justice.
What is our draw engine now that we don't have Standstill?
Accumulated knowledge.
So we're just like a worse deck than Mono Blue Tide.
We might be worse than Mono Blue Tide, but what Mono Blue Tide what Mono Blue Tide doesn't have is plow. And like you stated, like Blue Green Madness is just like, just a deck that puts a few relatively good costed idiots on the battlefield for not a lot of mana is gonna your Blue Tide deck.
I wouldn't go off of Mono Blue Tide only for the deck that is literally at the bottom of the tier list. You're like, but wait, what if you play against the worst deck in the field?
There's like other random, like, you're gonna be better. You're gonna be better against Grotog, which is gonna be a huge player this year. I have done so much influencing. I've done maximum influencing Everyone loves Grotog now. Everyone is super high on Call the Herd
Everyone
Grotog.
but you.
We'll get to that.
Like, I have never met anyone who was so single track minded until he wasn't.
I mean, it wasn't like a single track minded. I was just
This deck beats everything. It's goated.
Yeah, I thought it was goated. I was like looking at the spreads and I was like super hyped. And then I
think it's great matchups all around. I think you just can't win everything, man.
That is true. But we're still talking about Lands. So our engine is Fact or Fiction.
I'm tired of talking about this. It's
Fact
not
or Fiction,
AK,
anymore. Yeah, Blue Eye Control. Cut the standstills, figure something out. Probably don't play Teferi's Response. Maybe you need 2 more card advantage spells. Haven't figured that out yet.
Dude, even if you're at 8 card advantage spells, if it's like 4 Fact or Fiction, 4 AK, you're just like worse than all the other decks in the field. You have so much dead weight, right? Like, just count up the dead weight cards you have. Like reactive garbage, like Disenchant and Dismantling Blow against Goblins, Swords to Plowshares against Replenish. The deck that you have constructed in your mind is so capable of drawing the wrong half of its deck in every matchup. The reason that the deck was viable with Standstill is like, even though that was possible in the past, you would gain time by playing Standstill so that you could draw into the right half of your deck. You're losing that entirely by becoming an AK deck.
Well, Standstill is unplayable, so you can't play that card anymore.
Yeah, but you're just making it. You made a deck that went from 46% to 36%.
No, I went to 49. Trust me. The Rock, LOL, LMAO, RFOL. Don't play the Rock. Every deck beats this deck.
No, it does not. Flippy does not.
Almost every deck beats this deck.
This deck smashes Flippy, smashes other white weenie variants, even if they have Armageddon.
I mean, maybe they have. I mean, they might put an Exalted Angel on the battlefield.
That's problematic. We meant that guy.
They might have Mother of Roots.
Cannot beat mono blue Sapphire Medallion combo deck ever.
I cannot stress how bad the Rock is, despite the fact that it runs the best card in the format, Call the Herd. And we talked about it on the last podcast. It's not a good control deck, and it's not a good beatdown deck. So
what is this version of the Rock that you have up here with like 2 Crows and Tusker, 2 Phyrexian Rager, 3 Ravenous Baloth? Are you like making this is a joke Rock?
No, this is just like the Rock Gestalt. This list as pasted here is definitely playable. It needs a Dust Bowl or a Volrath Stronghold, but
no, this deck is terrible.
The Rock is bad. Enchantress. If you have not, feel free to check out Chris Tolar, 10 Arms, Enchantress, Mega Primer, and Metagame Breakdown ahead of LobsterCon. It's very hard to wrangle the data that we get from Premodern, so Chris takes a stab at it. I think that some of the conclusions are not what I would say. The biggest reason just being the TC Decks postings, just like, I don't know, they just don't mean anything. People are posting their like 6-person meetup versus like a 36-person Swiss tournament. The online tournaments are happening with no cut to top 8. So first place online is effectively arbitrary. Top 8's online. Like 10 Arms methodology places heavy emphasis on first place. And that's just because that's the only data that we have access to. So we can't do conversion data because we don't have the full picture. So instead we do first place conversion data, and that's been his method. But that just like, it's just too noisy. First place on TC Decks really just doesn't carry good statistical weight. And he thinks that this deck is well poised to be good at LobsterCon. He uses a lot of his own data. He keeps a meticulous spreadsheet, but I do think that once again, that data is a little problematic because, you know, he might be one of the best Enchantress players, and his opponents might not be the best like Goblins players, for instance. So he has some conclusions about matchups that, you know, I'm not necessarily all in on. And then I think the biggest the biggest case for Enchantress is made in the primer. The biggest case against is also made in the primer. This deck does not beat Replenish ever, and it often does not beat Red-Green Oath. It is very, very bad against
What caused this huge jump in price? Like, I'm just looking at the price of these decks. Most of the decks we're looking at are like in the $400, $500-$300 range. Now we're in a $2,000+ range. What caused that huge increase in price?
I mean, our Enchantress is a pricey deck. It contains so granted the Moxfield price are a bit overestimated because it's using Card Kingdom prices, and even the venerable Cool Stuff Inc. has Argothian at $8 less. And then of course TCG is quite low.
This card is $50. What?
Yeah, Opalescence has this is a long aside, but recently on MTG Goldfish, Opalescence and Parallax Tide have spiked in price. But if you just like look at it on TCG, they're just the same. So I don't really know what's going on there. I don't know if Goldfish just glitches sometimes, but that's neither here nor there. This deck super struggles against Red Green Oath and Replenish, and those are the two sort of hottest decks going into LobsterCon. I don't think it's particularly good against Goblins. You need to have a hand with a lot of reactive stuff in the form of Swords of Plowshares and Elephant Grass, and eventually find Solitary Confinement. I don't have. One moment. I don't have Chris's latest list, but he did tweak it to have more Solitary Confinement and whatnot. But I just 7-card hand, you're gonna have Plowshares, Enchantress, enough lands, and just a bunch of draw, and then draw into Elephant Grass.
Garbage that goes with Enchantress.
Yeah, I think you're gonna lose to Goblins a lot of the time. And honestly, you're fine against Dreadnaught, right? Just because you're gonna run a lot of disenchants, but if that's your only plan, you still get nut drawed. The disenchant plan doesn't work against turn 2 combo with double foil or foil vision charm. So
Sam Black's deck is a Swords to Plowshares deck, right? So Chris's deck has no Swords to Plowshares in the main deck, the strategic 3 Swords to Plowshares in the sideboard because he's an intuition deck.
He has 3 main deck now. I'll have to update his list to match the list that's in his primer.
So Sam's strategy is literally just Argothian Enchantress and Enchantress's Presence are the most mana efficient card draw spells that he can draw the maximum number of Swords to Plowshares and then Gaia's Blessing them back into his deck. So he has a fundamentally different paradigm than a regular Enchantress deck.
Yeah, and he has Sylvan Library Words of Worship as a secondary draw engine.
So it's we're going to go with Plan 2. And then there's Sylvan Library Words of War, Plan 3.
We are missing Plan 4 in the sideboard, which is this deck can produce green mana, so...
I love that Sam is going so hard with Sabo's Web. I think he once said to us, though, that he had a Sabo's Web in his hand, and he never had the second.
He never had, or the third mana if there's a Sphere
because of Sphere of Resistance. So he literally died with Sabo's Web in his hand while he was getting defeated by Wasteland Vision on board.
Yep, that sounds eerily
about right.
Eerily familiar to my experience last weekend. So I think the case for Enchantress is that Enchantress is a powerful deck. It is a deck that has an engine that will win the game once it gets rolling. And
if people are not prepared for Enchantress, and Enchantress is in the beatdown seat, right? So I think that we have this default thought that Enchantress is in the control seat because it has cards like Elephant Grass, Solitary Confinement, Worship. Punch me as much as you want, I'm gonna win. If Enchantress is the aggressor, and by the aggressor they're just casting their stuff, right, and the opponent's kind of getting punched, I think it's unbeatable, right? So in that context, the problem is when it is not the aggressor, right? So Dreadnought with the nut draw is a good example of Enchantress. You have to stop me instead of you getting to do your thing, right? Enchantress being up against the wall against turn 1 Rishodon Port, turn 2 Thermokarst, they might never get off the ground. But I think that as a proactive deck, Enchantress often feels unbeatable.
Yeah. I mean, once that second Enchantress is in play, the game is going to be really hard. But it is a long journey sometimes to put in and keep 2 Enchantress in play. And then I had a game with Red Green Oath against Enchantress in which they did have 2 Enchantress in play, and I had 2 Sphere of Resistance in play. And as a result, they could cast 1 spell a turn and draw 2 cards. and play a land and pass a turn. And then I blew up a land. And then the cycle repeats until they were dead. I think that, ironically enough, Chris is going to play Enchantress. Michael Phillips is going to play Enchantress. Sam Black might play Enchantress. Cam might be talked out of playing Enchantress, but he might play it anyways because he wants to. Or maybe Cam could just go back to playing Elves. I think
Elves is excellent.
Like, it's bad against Goblins and Burn, and it's like not even that ahead against Dreadnaught, and it's like not really that good against Red Green Oath, and it's horrible against Replenish. Like, Replenish is the Elves' like worst matchup, and it's like also the hottest deck right now.
And yet I think it's excellent. It's performing at above rate in large tournaments. It's the opposite of Goblins.
I don't know if that's true.
I don't know, man.
I haven't seen elves in a top in like months.
But you're just not looking in the right places.
Regardless, playable Dead Guy Ale, otherwise known. What's that?
Should we skip this one?
Should we skip Dead Guy Black White Control?
It's so unexciting. I played DI this matchup like 2 weeks ago at a playtest session. Andy said to me, mono blue is behind against Dreadnaught, and against black white, and the reason is sometimes they, you have the combo, but they just hold a swamp and then they duress your stifle, and then you're back to square one, and we played like 11 games and mono blue won every game.
Yeah, just get them with Chain of Vapor, or just like, I don't know, just you'll get it. You'll tide them. Let's just run down the list then. Black White Control, kind of bad against Replenish, despite the fact that I've never actually beat the deck with Replenish, so it could be a vibes thing. Good against Red Green Oath. Decent against Goblins for the most part. Quite bad against Burn, and needs to index heavily for Burn out of its sideboard. And really good against Dreadnaught. So I think it's a totally fair pick. If you're going to play a rock deck, play this Black White Control deck, and you'll be happy. This deck is really bad against Grotog, though. So there's that. And yeah, it's good against land still. It's bad against Stasis. I don't know. Maybe it's good. No, it's probably bad against Stasis. Yeah, it's probably horrible against Stasis.
It's just like that is so mid.
It's a mid by design. It beats Dreadnought though. Okay, next on the list is Elves. Make the case for Elves, because I've made the case against it.
I think like the deck is just excellent. It's just powerful. It unfettered. Obviously the format has a lot of fetters that you can throw onto it. So unfettered, it is turn 3 kill deck. It draws a lot of cards. It abuses survival.
The turn 3 is a really, really deep parlay though that involves Priest, Gaia's Cradle, and Wooded Foothills or Natural Mountain to make happen. So it's like a 3-card combo. I wouldn't just gift it the turn 3 win.
After Euros last year, I think, weren't you on the side that Elves beats Burn?
No. I've always been on the side that Burn beats Elves. And after Euros last year, I went deep on trying to figure out if Martin Berlin had a winning line against Suarez. After going deep on that, it did look like he didn't have a winning line, but also my Burn deck contains lots of Sulfuric Vortex, and now it has Earthquake, obviously, which is bananas against Elves, and I just don't think Lanny Burn could ever lose to Elves. I think Dick's Burn is still quite ahead, and you need to play in a pretty specific... Like, you need to make your Elves deck do some pretty specific things to beat Burn. When I tested with Ole Rod a couple years ago, the Tempting Worm plan was quite good, so, there's that. But overall, I just don't have this favored. And a lot of players are not going to have Tempting Worm. So,
I like Elves. I would consider playing elves.
Don't play elves. Bad against
This
both
is
red decks,
a
and
vibes
it
thing.
doesn't consistently beat burn. It's horrible against replenish, and it's bad against red green oath. The Terragon deck.
What if you don't want to? What if you're not worried about playing against the top of the metagame? What if you're more worried about playing against Stasis? Is there a better deck than elves?
There's not, but enjoy your 4-5 finish because as
4-5.
soon as you get anywhere near the top quarter of tables, you will be
Your
kicked
deck
back
is solid against Dreadnought decks.
down. Shrug. We'll get to Dreadnought. Target.
I mean, I guess your coin flip against the Rock, which is never a good.
It's not good. It's not good. Not a great place to be. You're pretty poor against Grotog, but sometimes you might just biorhythm them out. So,
What if you're playing against Lanny?
bring your biorhythms. Ban Terrageddon. This is the deck.
Why does this elves deck that you posted not have Call of the Herd?
Because it has Tempting Worm. But I would probably just like play Call Herd in the Tempting Worm.
Like, wouldn't you play like 7 walls and Call of the Herd?
I mean, then you're just like not a good elves deck, Then you just become like a walls and calls deck, which maybe could be the subject of another podcast. Ban Terrageddon. I was very excited about this deck.
Excellent.
Really cool deck. It gets to play 4 Call of Herd. It gets to play 4 Swords of Plowshares. It gets to play 4 Mox Diamond. It gets to play Sylvan Library 3-4. Only thing with this deck is that its engine can only put lands for the most part into hand. I mean, Sylvan Library is an engine sometimes, but not really. Its Terravores do not get enormous thanks to the help of Oath of Druids, so they're relatively tame. But against combo, you've got Weathered Wayfarer, Wasteland Chains. You have Meddling Mage. That's all very excited. Against Control, you grind them out with Call the Herd, or you just Windmill Slam Armageddon. Against Beatdown, you have Call the Herd, so you can block. Against Burn, you lose. Against Dreadnaught, you have a lot of Swords of Plowshares and you have Meddling Mage, so that's pretty exciting. Against Red Green Oath, you also kind of lose, because the Red Green Oath is just better at being a Terravore, Land Destruction, Wasteland deck situation, and all your creatures trigger Oath, so you have to board them out or figure it out. This deck at one point had flirted with a sideboard plan to board out all the creatures and bring in Oath. They have since moved on from that. This deck is horrible against Grotog. It is reasonable against Replenish, although it has gone back and forth. This deck beat Replenish in back-to-back finals of online challenges, but then in the most recent online challenge, it lost in the finals to Replenish. So could be a swingy matchup, could be one of those matchups where if either side wins, it wins by a lot, and so it doesn't feel close either way. So sweet deck, super playable deck. It would be a deck that I might play if it weren't for the fact that it doesn't really like this deck has the air problem where it's got 26 lands and 4 Mox Diamond, and the only way to get out of that is to draw enough utility lands that matter, or Sylvan Library or Weathered Wayfarer, and so it's just like a little bit underwhelming in the like card economy front.
I think that a lot of people like live in fear of this deck. Like Nick got it banned every week, basically in PSS, right?
Something of the sort, yeah.
Yeah. So this deck is a nightmare for Mono Blue Tide. This is like, I don't know if I could pick a deck higher that I would not want to play against.
Yeah, it's a contender. I think this is also a reasonable mid-range deck. This is a deck that can be beat down, can be control, and I would watch out for it as like kind of like one of those surprise decks. Like if you're preparing, I would put this in your spreadsheet for your sideboard plan. And just have an idea of what you're doing against.
I lost to Jeff Ferris, where I got the pair down in the last round of the last 2 1Ks ago. I thought I was going to draw in with Goblins. He handily beat me from this side. Armageddon ×4, Terravore ×4 is a hell of a combo if you get it. It's just really powerful. Like when you talk about some decks being powerful, you know, you're just like, well, Enchantress is powerful. Like, well, Enchantress has to have a bunch of resources and player doesn't do anything, right? Like, if it doesn't play lands and have Enchantresses and kind of snowball that kind of stuff, like this deck can like literally just play a Terravore. They don't have Swords of Pleasures, maybe, or I don't know. I guess you say now they have Swords of Pleasures, but traditionally they don't have Swords of Pleasures. You can just Armageddon, and they're like kind of up shit creek.
Yeah. Enchantress loses
counterspell.
pretty hard to Armageddon. Yeah. A lot of decks lose really hard to Armageddon. This deck has 4. I think what I would say is like there's sort of 2 things going on here. One is that it has a lot of good individual card quality, and then it's just kind of like, you know, all these cards you can sort of draw on their own and they're good, and then if you draw them in conjunction with each other, they can become great. And so that's pretty exciting. But the downside is just that, like, okay, like you can get outvalued and you can get out comboed or synergied.
The problem, if you're gonna put it that way, is like the deck has 30 mana sources, but the bigger problem is
and 4 Weathered Wayfarer, so that's 34.
is that like if you know how to do the timing trick, right? On upkeep, you can do Weathered Wayfarer Wasteland combos for indefinitely against your opponent.
Yeah, of course.
Like if they
you
don't,
can do it with fetch lands too. Yeah.
If they don't know the strategy or whatever, then you're just
your opponent essentially has to stay 1 land behind you if they don't want to get Wasteland.
And that's not a good place to be.
Yeah,
you just get beat down by 3/3s.
Unless your opponent's deck also contains Mox Diamond, in which case. You also get splash damage from Sabo's Web. Not heavy splash damage, because I guess you only have 2 port, 2 village, so I take it back, but still. You have to play Gemstone Mine in this deck, which is just...
Well, I don't know, like Treetop Village. I mean, but like Tranquil Thicket as a mana source is not great.
Yeah, of course.
I wouldn't want to play against Sabo's Web. I mean, this deck is... I think it's excellent. I think it is underplayed in the same way that I think that, you know, Hermit 12/12 is underplayed. But I think it would be on my list of the kind of deck I would not want to play in like a 9-round tournament that I cared about winning. I think like you have a high ceiling, not the highest ceiling, but a high ceiling, but you have so much downside. Like, look at the mana base. Think about a deck that has the following qualities: 2 Yavimaya Coast, 2 Trevis Ruins, 4 Wasteland, 2 Rishodon Port, 4 Gemstone Mine. I'm not telling you any of the other cards in your deck. Those are the cards that I name. I'll tell you what, I'll add 2 Basic Forest and an Adarkar Waste. By the way, you only have 1 green 1-drop, but 4 white 1-drops, 2 planes. Right? Like, there is a lot of ways that you can draw the wrong half of your mana base. Forget about the wrong half of your deck.
Yeah, and that's why we have Mox Diamond. We are going to take a voluntary mulligan just so that we can get our stuff going. I've played this deck. I like it, but I don't love it. It's just like I don't know. Maybe it's got that kind of Diet Coke kind of taste. You know, you kind of get in the Coke experience, but you're like, I need the real sugar. I need the real like card advantage, the real power. Like the Armageddon thing is like interesting because Armageddon, I'm not like hyped to cast Armageddon in this current metagame, and I'm not hyped to cast Meddling Mage in this current metagame. So in other metagames, you know, whatever. But like, you know, I'm a 4 Call the Herd deck. That's where I want to be. And instead of Armageddon, I would just play Mana Leak, because they get you to the same place. So that's my hot take. Moving on to Grotog. I don't have the latest Lanny Grotog list, but I think the list that's here is passable. The list here is like totally something that I would play. I've been enjoying Cephalid Coliseum in the mana base. I've been enjoying Call the Herd. So I would definitely look at my YouTube for the latest on that. But Grotog, I played the 1K. I lost to Red Green Oath twice. I had 2 Sabo's Web in my sideboard, and just as Sam had pointed out, it is really hard to cast your 3 mana Sabo's Web with your 17 land deck under Sphere of Resistance. So Sabo's Web did not feel like a clean answer. I did some playtesting with against Burn yesterday, and tried a bunch of different things. I tried my mulligan to chill strategy. Mulligan to chill was starting to feel bad because I was just like, if I go down to 4 for chill and I still don't find it, then I just lose. So I was like, okay, well, why don't we change things around and try to be a Hydroblast deck and just be like Hydroblast, Call the Herd, and hope that's enough. And oftentimes that wasn't enough. Curse Scroll and Resolved Grim Lavamancer and Sulfuric Vortex and just like different, like there's just so many ways the burn deck can. I just felt like I was the Goblin seat against a burn deck, the burn player that had, those tools for inevitability. So, really still don't feel like I've fully fixed the burn matchup to like try to swing it. Like, don't get me wrong. I think maybe with the chill plan, I brought back in dazes. So I was starting 2 days. Maybe.
So you're like 2 days Swords of Plowshares, Call of the Herd.
And I still can't beat
AK?
burn. Yeah. Yeah. So
what elements of Grotog are still in your deck?
Yeah. Effectively. Well, Daze is a Grotog element.
Yeah, but you're like this. You're like Swords of Plowshares, Call of the Herd.
There's always
AK?
Quirion Dryad. But I mean, I think it's worth pointing out that like the biggest reason this deck is good is because it's like a great Meddling Mage counterspell deck. And the biggest reason why I've been not liking it is because Meddling Mage, the card, and Counterspells, the card, are not good against Red Green Oath. They're not good against Goblins, and they're not really good against Burn. So the reason why this deck was amazing for me is because when I'm not playing against those 3 decks, I'm crushing Dreadnaught, I'm crushing Replenish, even though I lost the land because of stupid Wrath of God and my draws were bad. And maybe I was too lost in the sauce, and I didn't have I cut too much disruption from the deck, so that's super reasonable. And I lost to Exalted Angel, whatever. But most of the time, I've been super good against Replenish. Down the line, the Call the Herd edition, the AK edition has made this deck super grindy. It's like against control, I don't even feel like I need Armageddon anymore because I just draw more cards and play more threats than a control deck can for just less mana. Like, you don't have to get in them. You just have, like, if their deck has Factor Fiction and your deck has Accumulated Knowledge, like, you're going to create more windows. And they're just never going to have the space to be like, oh, I'm going to Factor Fiction, because the big reason why control decks can cast Factor Fiction is because they've answered everything that their opponent is doing. So they have a turn where their opponent does something they don't have to react to, and instead they can gas up. But with Grotog, with Accumulated Knowledge, I've just, and Call the Herd, I've just never run out of gas, and I've been able to always be on the front foot against lower decks, such that I don't need the sort of shut the door Armageddon type effect. So lots of things that have been extremely exciting for Grotog. I love AK in the deck. I thought it was a fluke, and then I played another. So I went 5-1 in the league, and it's okay, it was the league, whatever. But then I had to play the playoff, and I won the playoff, and I top forward the. I didn't have AK for either 1K tournament. I was trying Skeletal Scrying out. Skeletal Scrying doesn't work, so don't try that. Just like,
oh man, Skeletal Scrying looked so bad.
Yeah, it was horrible.
I saw you draw it.
Yeah,
it was like horrible.
Yeah, it was disgusting. So overall, AK and Grotog, super hyped about it. I should probably add my Grotog with AK list to this tier list to keep people abreast of what's going on with me. But overall, not being able to resolve this burn matchup and Red Green Oath matchup are a huge knock against Grotog.
You're always losing to like Bill or SWB with Red Green Oath, right? Like that.
I'm 0-3 against them. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
0-4 because Bill beat me twice in that meetup.
So
or the 1K, yeah.
Our thesis right now is that Red Green Oath is one of the top 2 decks, and everybody knows it.
I don't know if everybody knows it because not that many people are playing it right now.
It's like one of the most expensive decks. Do you think?
I mean, I don't. Other expensive decks are topping tournaments. You know, it's irrelevant. Like the people who like Jared Doucette won a monthly. There's the boys in mass all have access to the deck, and they can all choose to play it at their quarterlies, and I'm sure some are, and I'm sure they're not always, sometimes they're missing top 8, and maybe the Massachusetts meta overcorrected against Red Green Oath. But if you look at the like sort of global meta, you're seeing a lot less Red Green Oath than I would expect, and one of the reasons is Replenish. And replenish is superb against a red green oath deck based on results. I actually haven't played the matchup. I look at the decks and I'm just like, well, replenish has a lot of non-basic lands. A lot of people are cheating and running 24 lands in their replenish deck, and
no moxes.
Yeah, well, that's another thing. And I'm just like, this deck is good against specifically Frantic Search, good against Rishon Import, thanks to Frantic Search. It is still going to get Wastelanded a lot. It is still going to get Stone Rained a lot. It is still going to get Sphere Resistanced.
Ancient Tomb is $100.
It's not going to get Oathed, which is a huge plus for it. It's not going to get Plowshared. So those are all interesting elements. But basically, Replenish's rise has been one of the reasons why Red Green Oath has been quiet, at least in the Magic Online metagame, where you see a lot of both of those decks. Like, Red Green Oath seems relatively fairly represented online, and Replenish is slightly overrepresented. So the case for Replenish, quite strong. What do you think about Replenish?
I mean, I was the first person to make Replenish cool, so we just start there. That is a factual statement. It depends on how many Swords to Plowshares you're going to play. Stock Replenish and Linear Replenish, according to SpikeColony.com, both have 4 Swords to Plowshares. To quote Dr. Rich, I never won 2 monthlies in a row with Parfait. That was
which is like slightly facetious, because he like won a monthly and then he won Fall Brawl, which was the monthly, and maybe it wasn't back to back. I don't remember exactly, but the man goes second place in North American Championships, and then wins a monthly with the Shard Phoenix, modern version, and then wins Fall Brawl, which is even sweatier than the monthly. So to quote Rich Shea, I never, like, he won back to back with Replenish, but like, come on, Rich, like, Parfait, you were much scarier on Parfait than you are with Replenish. Like, that's just a fact. The fact that he beat Flippy, which should be a very tough matchup,
went to 5 games.
Yeah, going to 5 games.
I watched the end of it. Yeah,
is definitely a huge coup for Replenish. So the idea that I've been saying it all along, I'm like, Replenish is just bad against Meddling Mage Counterspell. It's like, well, Replenish has defeated Meddling Mage Counterspell in the monthly. It defeated Meddling Mage Counterspell against me when I played against Lan. So, there's nuance to that picture, and I'm totally open to being
I beat
wrong.
Meddling Mage Counterspell in LobsterCon 2022. Just FYI.
Well, that was before time, so.
So
what was their mage naming?
I can't remember.
You only had 1 Swords to Plowshares. It's actually kind of funny. So if they mage Plowshares, it's like the worst they can do.
I think I might have written it in my return report, but he named an irrelevant card because he went first and we just mirror played each other. So I think it was just like Flooded Strand, Island, and then he plays a Meddling Mage, and then I don't know. He named a card that was like probably not in my deck.
Yeah.
And then I intuitioned.
Well, that's part of the problem. But I think that the Red Green Oath dimension is very interesting because a lot of people are playing Sabo's Web main or some Sabo's Web side, which I think is really something. Like, I don't like it at all. Like, I just assume.
Why? It's great.
I mean, I just assume that you're going to get there anyways. Like, all you have to do is cast Replenish ever, and then they lose.
Okay, so here's the thing. There are some folks, I remember like a couple months back, Fran posted that Replenish with Impulse and Counterspell deck.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, Sabo's Web is just like an Impulse. It's just better. Just like in Dreadnaught, you would just play it. It's great.
I would actually be happy to play Impulse in a combo-oriented Replenish deck. And if you're looking at Lanny Replenish list, I would probably like try No Mox Diamond, trim a land, play 3 Impulse, 3 Mana Leak, and trim a 2-mint. But that's neither here nor there. I would be very afraid of Replenish. Some decks are absolutely cold to Replenish. All black mid-range decks are super, super cold to Replenish. Your Pit Racks, your Rocks. Normally,
the Rock is the absolute worst.
Normally, your black-white control decks, but sometimes you can get it through your mono-black aggro, your black-red Muse, your black-red Insidious Dreams. All gonna have a
I mean,
horrible
those decks
day.
can get there in sideboarded games. You can duress their counterspell.
Yeah, but you're so far behind. Like the reason why I'm stating it is because it is so rare to me that like there's a deck that just beats an entire category. Like Replenish crushes Survival of the Fittest decks. It crushes Oath of Druids decks for the most part. It did crush. Like it used to be really great against Parfait. Red Green Oath obviously has a chance to mana screw them. So it's totally
that's
reasonable.
why you want to play the Sabos way.
But the Oath of Druids, the card itself, Oath of Druids, card itself, Swords of Plowshares, and the third best card in the format, Call the Herd, are all quite bad against the cards in Replenish. So it kind of just eats up all of these mopey mid-range decks and like some sort of control-y decks, and then post sideboard you just like grind out, you just deep analysis or factor fiction or exalted angel out the greedy landstill player, and the only tricky thing is trying to play around mono blue tide, which isn't a very popular deck and you don't stand to worry about it, and sometimes you get burned out and sometimes you get wasteland, like you wastelanded, but overall this deck is awesome. It's really good at mid-range plan, really good at a combo plan, and it's got those gears. I love it for that reason. The only reason I don't like it is because I'm not like I look at the deck like, one, I don't want to run Sabo's Web because I don't want to throw away that kind of I don't want to throw away those slots for a matchup that I think that I might be good against. And even if like Sabo's Web just like slams the door, I don't expect a lot of people to play Red Green Oath. So there's kind of a pinch there. You sometimes lose to Goblins, like you Wasteland. You sometimes lose to Burn, just get burned out. You might lose because somebody's playing a beatdown deck with so if you're playing mono black, okay, take it back. So if you're playing mono black beatdown and you have a pretty fast clock and you have Tormod's Crypt, maybe you can get there against Replenish. So I just don't want to get unlucky with this deck, and I do think this deck kind of gets unlucky sometimes. People have been tinkering with the deck nonstop. I've seen a lot of lists. I haven't got a chance to try them all. Maybe Rich's list solves the problem, but it is like a clunky, weird deck that just kind of draws funky and sometimes ends up not doing anything. So there's that. So those are the only factors that are working against Replenish in my mind, but there are a ton of reasons to play it. And in fact, I think if I'm being brutally honest, it belongs in tier 1, but it
obviously belongs in tier 1. I think 2 months ago I told you I thought it was just the best deck in the field.
Yeah, but you just say shit. So I'm allowing time for things to sink in.
It was winning everything. How could Mengu was playing it, Lan was playing it,
Well, that's the thing. Is Mengu playing it is just kind of well, it's Mengu. Just
Mengu was playing elves, and
Mengu didn't even
accept elves as viability.
Both those arguments move in the same direction. I don't move the needle on a deck just because Mengu's playing it and winning with it. If Mango was just playing Red Ring Goblins, he'd probably win all his tournaments anyways.
Okay, listen. I think that Replenish is probably overall the best deck. My caveat to that is I don't like its Dreadnaught matchup. I am perfectly willing to play other counterspell.
Oh, decks. I'm super happy with its mono blue Dreadnaught matchup, right? Because you just sit back with your Abeyance Seal Cleansing Plowshares and do nothing, and then after they
in response to a Dreadnought,
after they
so good.
Well, first you'll Abeyance them, right, and then they'll counter the Abeyance, and then you'll mana short. Maybe they counter the mana short, and then you just Plowshares them, and then you'll just cast Replenish the next. You are both great at being proactive and reactive, and if your dastardly blue-white Dreadnought opponent leans on Meddling Mage and Brain Freeze, or potentially Armageddon,
you come for the king. You better not miss.
You might have a hard time.
59 is not 60, my friend.
Yep. Overall, I agree. I think that you sometimes, and you can lose to mono blue Dreadnought if, once again, if you don't have your good interaction and they
have the
have it
nuts.
quick. Yeah,
You
they
have
have the
blue mana
nuts.
instead of white. I think
Yeah,
this deck. I am against playing this deck myself. I feel like I've been there, done that.
Which is great because then I can borrow all the cards for it, which are currently going up in price. Shout out to Mike Arnold, though. If you're looking for Parallax Tide, Mike Arnold he's like, so every time I place an order, I just add Parallax Tide to the order so I get free shipping. And so now he has 12 Parallax Tide and he's like selling them for $10 a pop. So get in while they get in. It's good.
These listings have Parallax Tide at $100. Oh, that's
for foil. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, never mind.
Yeah. $10 on Card Kingdom, maybe slightly cheaper on TCG Player, but Mike's copies are LP, so get them good. Yeah, you're over replenish. You don't want to, even if it means that you could win this tournament, you don't want to go again. You don't want to wear the same. You don't want to wear the same dress twice. And I totally understand.
It's just why own a second pair of shoes?
Agree.
It's great. It's a great deck.
Yep. Play replenish. Goblins. Case 4, easy. Goblins beats everything, even the stuff that thinks it beats you. Con, sometimes your opponent has like a lot of pyroclasm. And
I think Goblins is overplayed. I think
it is. Well, statistically, it's over. Like, okay, it's not overplayed, right? Because every other deck is overplayed, right? So there should be like 0 copies of the rock, and it's like 10% the rock. So like Goblins being at like 12 or 15% is like roughly fine, but like the problem is every other deck like is underplayed where it should be, right? So replenish is probably at 5% and it should be at 15 or 20%. And so like I think Goblins is at the right number. It's just like all the other decks are too low that are good.
I think Goblins is overplayed.
There's no reason. Okay,
its top 8 conversion has been disappointing.
That's not data that we have. Don't just say a number. Don't just say a fact and then just be like
banding.
No. This like, but that's only like the. Again, like this is the. So you're right. The banding thing took from multiple major Swiss tournaments, but 1, there's not enough of those. 2, it's just like. It's just annoying. Like I am severely triggered by anybody who's just like, oh well, Goblins has a poor conversion rate, because it's like, okay, well, like, yeah, Goblins has a poor conversion rate, but like Ponza has 100% conversion rate and like, and 100% top 1 rate, and it's just kind of like, okay, like, oh, but then that's just like a thing for Ponza. It's just like there's just too much noise in the data. Like some of these Goblins lists are just like super chaotic too. Like some people are bringing like black-red Goblins. Some people don't know how to play the deck. Like Burn has a bad top 8 conversion rate, and you're just like, well,
Burn has an excellent top 8 conversion rate.
What's Burn's? Okay, fine. Now we have to pull it up.
Burn's top 8 conversion rate is 20% above expectation. It's excellent.
If you have not checked it out yet, go ahead and check out.
But like nothing. But like Mono Blue Tide is peerless. It's.
Oh yeah, Goblins. No, we're fine. So Goblins is 8% of the field, is 7% of the top 8, so it's fine.
Yeah, that's.
Burn is 10, 11. We're talking about 1% differences, Mike. Well, that's not large.
So first of all, I thought it was 10, 12, which is 20% above expectation, not 1% above expectation.
No, but it's I mean, we're talking about like the difference of a player or not, though. Like we're talking about the difference of like whether like, I just don't find this useful, right? Okay, like I don't find it useful because like, okay, so replenish is like 4%, replenish is 11% conversion, right? You're just like, oh, like replenish is like super overperforming, and like that's definitely true. Replenish is like a good deck, but like I don't know, for Goblins, like it's a rounding error for Goblins to be 8-7. Like it's a rounding error for Burn to be 10-11. I think like the only large effect here is like replenish, and like the other problem is how small the fields are, right? So it'd be different if Goblins was 20% of the field and had like 10% top 8 conversion, but like the fact that it's such a small amount of the field already means that individual players like can produce too much noise in the data, right? So for elves to be like 3% and then have a 5% conversion rate, like all that tells me is that there's just a bunch of elves tryhards. And we're talking about three guys who are like amazing at playing elves are just going to like top 8 every like event that we have enough data for. And they're just going to like skew it. It doesn't make elves like, you know, it doesn't make our estimation of elves an underestimation.
Then why look at the data at all? Like, so look, you're just like, okay,
I don't like looking at the data. I don't think we have
to my expectations. Then it's good if it.
No, I don't I try not to use aggregated data like this when I argue the case for decks. Like me personally, I just don't think it's that productive because like when I sit like some of these like the Landstill, the Rock, like whatever, like some of these decks, like I just know from playing them, and I know that a lot of people are going to play them, and there's just too much chaos in the data. Like Grotog isn't on this list, right? And I would just like be like, Grotog like can top 8 a tournament, and it can like crash and burn in a tournament, and like burn, we play like a lot of burn. Like I know exactly what's happening with burn. Like I don't need to be like, oh, there's 100 burn pilots and whatever your expected top 8 conversion, like it's slightly above that. I'm just kind of like, okay, well, like I don't know, some people are good at burn and some people are bad. Like if I have any advice to somebody, like that their pure goal is to like win Magic tournaments, like my advice is to like take the deck that is like the best and like become the best at playing the deck. Like it, and my estimation of what deck is the best deck is going to be like based on like my experiences with the deck. So it's like with replenish, like I've worked a lot on replenish, and replenish performs under my expectation of like a good deck, and that's colored of course because of the kind of player I am. Like I might be one of the least, like amongst players who spend a lot of time trying to get good at decks, like I might have spent so much time on replenish and I like continue to suck at playing it. Like that's definitely a possibility, but like replenish is much less rewarding to me in like the win column than decks like burn or Grotog or like whatever,
I buy it.
Like the mono red goblins deck I played, like I just won every match, and I was just like, this is what good decks feel like. I can take 10 cards out of them, and they're still phenomenal, right? Like Grotog, I've changed like a million things, and I didn't miss top 8 until last weekend. Like I literally
why are you
never missed top 8. I'm off of it because last weekend I missed top 8.
So I think Goblins is obviously Goblins, right? So I don't think Goblins is bad. I think I use the word disappointing, but disappointing is that Goblins has a high bar, right? Goblins is Goblins.
But it's a high bar because we gave it to it, right?
But so Goblins has a lot of structural issues that people just don't talk about. Like one of them is like, I mean, I guess I've won a lot of games where I don't have first turn Lackey, but like your hands,
you win a lot. This is the problem, right? The problem is Lackey is just like fentanyl, and the rest of Goblins is heroin. And so the fact that your opponent,
one of them's addictive, one of them will just kill you on the spot.
Yes, exactly. Okay. Like Lackey is like, once your opponent touches it, they're dead, right?
So
but the rest of the deck still kills them.
I'm like sitting there like playing against Sunny, playing 1 card per turn. Like I keep like a 2-land hand in my deck of like all 5 drops, right? Playing 1 card per turn against a deck that's like AKing and Factor Fictioning against me, and then I just keep winning.
Yep.
And I'm like, this doesn't make any sense. I'm playing 1 card per turn.
Heroin, baby. You'll get them. It doesn't matter. You're still gonna get them.
Goblins is Goblins.
I think my sincere apologies to anybody who's struggling with addiction. Please consult your local people, resources. It's a serious issue. Just for the sake of analogy,
just like Goblins.
Our
discussion about Goblins.
Goblins is crazy good. Yes, Goblins is bad against the card Pyroclasm. It's bad against the card Oath of Druids.
Engineered Plague.
It's bad against the. Well, not a lot of decks can support Engineered Plague because they're not capable of producing black mana. So I'm just gonna kind of tuck that under. And then also, Goblins is worse against Pyroclasm than it is against Engineered Plague. Against Engineered Plague, it has a plan, right? Like, it's only when the second one gets in the mix that things start getting, like, looking really dire. And then if you have a combination of Engineered Plague and Call the Herd, then you're in great shape. Like, that's why Engineered Plague is, like, also great as a rock. Because, like, the rock plays Engineered Plague, and it also plays Phyrexian Rager, which all of a sudden rules the battlefield now that there's a plague on the table.
Well,
but
that's what happens when you play a deck that plays one spell a turn.
I mean, you can't, like, this is what I say. Stats be damned, 1%, 15, whatever you want to say, it's like 15% under expectation or 20 or whatever. Like, Smiths, just goblins the shit out of out of some of the best players in pre-modern, like, and it just it didn't even look close most of the time. He did it to me. Like, I think one of the, like, we talk about this with Burn a lot, right? Where it's like, oh, you can beat Burn with sideboard cards. It's just like, you have to beat Burn with sideboard cards because you can't beat Burn with just your normal cards. And it's the same thing with Goblins. Like, very few strategies are inherently powerful against Goblins, and that includes
nonsense Goblins list you have with 3 Pyrokinesis. Is this a joke?
Oh yeah, I have to update to add Pyrokinesis, but you got to run 3 Tormod's Crypt, right? Because otherwise, you're actually super annoyed by replenish. So,
I think if you have I don't like the vibe on Goblins. It seems pretty behind against Red Green Oath to me.
So the vibe is not in great shape. So I made the case for, right? Goblins is a super resilient deck. It's got super great game. It's really hard for a lot of decks to contend with. A lot of decks are not naturally good against it. Red Green Oath and Replenish are naturally advantaged against Goblins. So I think
Goblins is fine against Replenish.
You've always said it fine, but but I mean, Replenish has been like one of the things is that now. I mean, it just depends. Goblins is certainly going to be better against 2 Plowshare Replenish. I guess I'll put it that way.
Okay, let me tell you something. How many times have you been on the 4 Pyroclasm, 3 to 4 Call of the Herd side of the table? You just
against Goblins?
Yeah,
not often, but when I am, I actually tested this in my 5-color Dreadnaught testing, where I boarded in 3 Pyroclasm, 4 Call of the Herd, and I had Mox Diamond to get all that going very early.
By the way, Red Green Oath has Mox Diamond also.
Yeah. Once Red Green Oath boards into Mox Diamond, Call of the Herd, but like you're trying to disenchant every Oath of Druids, and also there's a 3/3, and also your board is getting wiped.
Yeah, because you can't win a fair game against their 3/3 because none of your guys can get through a 3/3. So your only recourse is to play a bunch of guys to try to wide, right? And they just Pyroclasm you.
Yeah. Pyroclasm Call of the Herd is going to get Goblins. Luckily, there's not a lot of red-green Pyroclasm Call of the Herd decks, so.
Yeah, but one of them exists, and it's pretty good.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Let's see. Then there's Burn. I think this deck is the best. You should play it.
Yep, Burn rules. Sadly, you have to bring Lava Darts to LobsterCon because you're going to play a lot of mirrors and you're going to lose equity where you wanted Earthquake. I am imploring. We have roughly 1,000 listeners per episode on this podcast. I just want a few of you. All of you would be great, but a few of you who are going to LobsterCon, just play the Earthquakes and just let it ride. Because some of you are going to play mirrors against other Earthquake players. Some of you are going to win mirrors against opposing Burn players who don't draw their Lava Dart, or when they do draw their Lava Dart, they only have 2 mountains in play, so it doesn't matter. And you'll have Seal of Fire, which is incredible against Lava Dart. And just do it. Just play Earthquake. Maybe I'll play Burn. Honestly, now that I'm not playing Grotog, like up is down. Like I don't even know what to do. Maybe I'll just play Burn with Earthquake because. Yeah, I think Earthquake is nuts, and it just sucks because it's not as good as Lava Dart against the mirror. And the rest of the time, every deck loses to you game 1, except for Dreadnaught, and sometimes Red Green Oath if they get 0 resistance, and Enchantress. But we talked about how people should not be playing Enchantress and Replenish because sometimes they win on turn 3 or turn 4 if they're on the play. Other than that, you'll beat every deck game 1. And then you just have to dodge their sideboard cards in game 2 and 3. Burn rules. But yeah, don't play it if
we talk about it every freaking podcast.
Yeah, exactly. People are sick of hearing it. I will say
recommendation.
It great recommendation. Unfortunately, the best you can hope for is 5th through 8th place, because once you're in the top 8, you're just gonna get rocked. Sorry. Always get rocked in the top 8 if you're playing Burn. Dreadnaught. Now's a good time to talk about Milling Mage and how it might be time for Mono Blue Dreadnaught.
I mean, just Mono Blue's performing, Meddling Mage is bad against Other Druids. That's my main thesis. The decks
and Call of the Herd.
The decks that Meddling
and
Mage
Mishra's Factory.
The decks that Meddling Mage is outstanding against are other Dreadnaught decks.
Replenish. Every weird combo deck, like it's good against weird. It's good against Fluctuator in case anybody wants to.
Ooh, they can't even really interact with it, right? Like they kind of can with like
that expunge is not going to resolve. Yeah, the expunge is not hitting. Like we know exactly what we need to do once the Meddling Mage is on the table, and that's attack 10 times while holding up every counterspell for every
one
copy of expunge.
Yeah. So, what do you name Songs of the Damned?
What do I name? Oh, if Fluctuator is not on the table, I will name Fluctuator.
So it is, from a kind of a shell standpoint, the best deck that you could play in pre-modern, I think. It's only contextually that it's not the best.
Yeah. It has incredible nut advantage. It is great against burn. It has draws that it can't lose. And I think an important thing to point out that, okay, so this is my observation. And Fran might not agree with me on this. And I haven't fully fleshed this out. I haven't figured out all the nooks and crannies and the nuance of this argument. But Fran published a video recently of Blue-White Stiflenaught. You should check out his Blue-White Stiflenaught Ultimate Guide. It's 1 billion words. And Fran has his 4 opt 2 impulse split list. Obviously, I've talked to death about how good impulse is, how you want to run the maximum impulse. And I noticed in Fran's video that he plays extremely conservatively, which has actually always been how he plays. If you look at a lot of his Blue-White Stiflenaught video, he does not jam. And the difference between Blue-White Stiflenaught and Mono Blue Stiflenaught is that Mono Blue Stiflenaught is a jam deck, and Blue-White Stiflenaught is more of a hang out and get there Splinter Twinny type deck. And in this metagame, I think you have to jam. And honestly, you might have to jam so hard that you just don't even play hate for Meddling Mage. Just don't. If you're going to LobsterCon, you're playing Dreadnaught, you're worried about Meddling Mage, just don't. Maybe a couple powder kegs, sure. But this Mishra's Factory stuff, this other stuff, I would avoid it, and I would just be look, I might counter the mage, I might foil the mage, I might find an answer, but the rest of the time, I'm just going to try to find a hand that puts Dreadnaught on the battlefield on turn 2, turn 3 at the latest, keep that hand, put Dreadnaught on the battlefield at turn 2, turn 3 in the latest, and probably win. I think that's the best approach.
Majority of the time. Yeah. I love jamming.
Yeah. I think that's the approach right now, because there is so much stuff that giving your opponent draw. It used to be that it kind of felt like you would just mage whatever your opponent has. So if your opponent had a bunch of extra draw steps, it just didn't matter because you had Meddling Mage. So it's okay, well, Mono Blue Dreadnaught, the problem is it can beat 1 Plowshares, but it can't beat 2, right? But Blue White Dreadnaught can beat 2 Plowshares. And because Blue White Dreadnaught can be multiple copies of Plowshares, it doesn't have to jam. And et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But now there's Oath of Druids putting out 13/13 Terravores. There's Sphere Resistance making it impossible for you to operate. There's, people are bringing in Crumble, Mog Salvage, probably not Mog Salvage, but extra Overload Blasts. They already are kind of happy to run a bunch of differently named Disenchant and Plowshare effects. And by giving your opponent more time to draw those cards, you're creating you're creating more opportunity for them to go to beat your plan. And the difference between the Mono Blue Dreadnaught deck, it's not just if somebody says one more word about islands, I'm going to lose my fucking mind, because it's not the islands. It's just the fact that you have 16 or 17 lands instead of 19, and that you have 12 cantrips instead of 8. That's the reason why the Mono Blue Dreadnaught behaves and is structurally different. It doesn't run Plowshares. It runs all this weird other nonsense. I don't know, Reality Ripple.
Boomerang.
Try Merchant Scroll. Honestly, sounds pretty good to me.
Slow.
Dave Kaplan tech. Yeah, slow, but if you need a foil, you need a gush, you need a you need that boomerang or reality ripple. Like, give it a shot. I don't know about Cunning Wish, probably not that. And then they're all basic lands. I think you should actually run a couple fetch lands to shuffle your portents and to mix up your impulses in case you like impulse all your dreadnoughts to the bottom. But
I stifled one of John's polluted deltas. That was
yeah.
I had stupid stifle in my deck. I from the mono blue tides side, I left 2 of my 3 stifles in because what if am I going to be pants down against brain freeze? Like that's the
good point. Yeah, good point.
That's the problem. So that's actually one of the reasons I think I lost both of those Dreadnaught matches 0-2. I drew both my stifles in both of the sideboard games that I lost, and I only had 2.
And plus, meddling mage is bad against Call of the Herd. Just like you have meddling mage naming Call of the Herd.
This podcast has talked about Dreadnaught variations unendingly, starting with the very
first this is an important departure from where we've been, right? Because we've never recommended mono blue with our whole chest. You've always liked it more than me. I've always hated it. And I have been thinking about it a lot recently. If your position
right now is jam, and your position right now is I'm off meddling mage, mono blue is a better jam deck than blue-white.
Absolutely, yeah.
I mean, if for no other reason than the mana is better, right, for jamming.
But it's important to note, I would say that blue-white Dreadnaught was better into the metagame from 2023 than mono blue Dreadnaught is into the 2024 meta. Like that's an important thing, which is that even though blue-white, at least on vibes, feels worse than mono blue right now, that doesn't mean that all the stuff that we'd been saying in 2023 about how good blue-white Dreadnought is untrue. Like it was unreal how good it was in 2023.
I'm actually going to challenge you on the fetch lands thing. It depends on how many Guru Islands you own, I suppose.
Yeah, it's an important factor.
But the one of the main incentives, I think, or like non-disincentives to blue-white. Remember, I had a visceral reaction when I couldn't foil once, right? Is that look, if you're all basic lands, you do get a meaningful bonus on Daze, Foil, and Gush, right? That is a thing.
I just told you to fuck off with that. I literally just told you to not. I don't want to have
a non-zero factor.
I don't give a fuck. Like it just doesn't matter compared. Like you need to like understand the difference of like order. You're right.
Lanny, we're talking about not playing polluted delta in a mono blue deck. Not talking about
I understand. But it's still like the size of the effect is still like it's just saying it's non-zero is just like, okay, that's fine. But like you can't just say it's non-zero and be like, thus it's more important than the effect. Like Tom had his game in the PSS where he like impulsed a bunch, like he impulsed and he couldn't take a card that he wanted because he had to take Fire Exchange Dreadnought that turn. Because there's nothing he could do if he put 2 Fire Exchange Dreadnoughts on the bottom of his library. That's non-zero. I'm not saying it's larger than the amount of times that you're going to top deck Island from the foil, but like you look at the construction of this deck, you look at how many cantrips you have, you just think about the game script and what's going to happen. And I'll tell you what's going to happen is that if you have a foil in your hand, you're not going to not play the fetch land for the turn. If you have a portent in your hand, you're gonna navigate around your portent successfully. And if you have a gush in your hand, none of this matters. If you have a daze in your hand, none of this matters. Like the only situation where you get busted by having a fetch land is if you have 1 life, which is a much more reasonable thing to say, or if you untap and draw for the turn with a foil in your hand that you didn't know that, like you portent, shuffle, draw foil, next top deck is polluted delta, and then you can't cast foil. But every other time you can navigate
it on stifle.
Well, again, non-zero, but the amount of closeness to 0 is just like hilarious. Like, and the upside is awesome. Turning portent into impulse is like completely insane. It is very, very good. Like I can't stress how good it is because like you have to portent shuffle like so many piles just because you want one of the 3 cards, but you can't be locked under the portent, right? So you like portent and you're like, oh, I need a vision charm. And your portent is like vision charm island. And you're like, okay, I can take the vision charm, but now I have island coming. So I can't jam because I'll have nothing behind the jam, or I have to jam because like I have nothing coming. And then if they beat me, they beat me. Like shuffling portent is insane. Now, all that said, like, I think 1 life is one of those things that's like slightly more difficult to measure because it always does 1 life, right? It doesn't always bust your foil. It doesn't always get stifled, but it always costs 1 life. So every game you fetch, it's going to cost you 1 life. And if you want to come at me and be like, I don't want to run fetch lands because I don't want to take 1 damage, that's okay. But fuck out of here with the islands. I'm so sick of hearing about islands. I swear to God. Like, it's just like, sure, it's non-zero, but you know, like the problem I have is like people just say this shit and like they made up their mind and they just like they somehow have never played a deck. Like once you play blue-white Dreadnaught, you're just like, oh, I've got foil in hand. I guess I'll play my non-island card and I'll keep my island in my hand. It's like that was really, really hard. It's like, oh, I drew Gush. Like I've been playing foil decks since the beginning of started playing in pre-modern. I've only ever had 8 islands and 4 flooded strand in any of these decks, and I've always been fine. Like, blech. And plus, if you only have 11 gurus, you got to do what you got to do. I only have 11 revised islands, Mike. What am I gonna do?
I don't know. Play non-revised islands.
No, thank you. I have I don't have enough unglued for. I think I have enough unglued to play blue-white Stifle Knot, but not mono blue. But I'll probably pick up some more unglued at LobsterCon. If you're trading your unglued islands and you would like my duels, because I'm broke and I'm going to sell my duels, hit me up at LobsterCon. Anything else on Dreadnaught?
It's a great deck.
Yeah. Should I just play mono blue Dreadnaught? Well, actually, what I'm going to do is I'm probably going to give E-Time mono blue Dreadnaught. And then...
Isn't he going to be confused? Because like last year you gave him blue-white Dreadnought?
No, I'm just going to explain to him. Like, so I handed him the blue-white Dreadnaught deck last year, and I was like, it's Splinter Twin. And then now I'm going to hand him the mono blue Dreadnaught deck, and I'm just going to be like, it's combo. Like, I don't know. What's a good allegory for mono blue Dreadnaught in modern terms? It's just like, I don't know. It's Belcher. It's not really Belcher. Are there any counterspell? I mean, it's like kind of whatever. I'm just going to explain to him when I hand him the deck that things have changed. I'm just going to like everything I told you last year is different. Parfait is banned. There's this new Oath deck, and it's kind of annoying because Sphere of Resistance and Oath of Druids were not that big in the metagame, and now they are. And here you go. And that's just the talk that we're gonna have. Red Green Oath is my number 1 recommendation for somebody to take LobsterCon. This deck is insane.
When I said I wanted to play Red Green Oath a few months ago, you told me not to.
I have changed my mind. I think that you could play Red Green Oath. I think that I might play Red Green Oath. Like I don't like this deck. I don't like that every card is sorcery speed besides naturalize. Like I don't like that it doesn't draw any cards ever unless your opponent is generous and is allowing you to have your life total and you find Sylvan Library. Your 4 copies of a 60 card deck of cards that like actually generate any kind of card advantage. Meanwhile, you're just like Mox Diamond, like whatever. I don't own $22 Sphere of Resistance, so there's that as well. And I just don't like, I mean, everything that you dislike about the deck, I dislike too. I just think that you outsize the effects. Like I absolutely agree. Sometimes you just flood out in a very embarrassing way because you just don't run a lot of interaction besides Stone Rains. And if your opponent is okay with you Stone Raining them, then you have a problem. Like, why are you good against mono blue Dreadnaught? It's like, well, you have Sphere of Resistance. It's like, okay, well, what if you don't draw Sphere of Resistance? It's like, well, then you have some naturalize and some blast to fall back on. But other than that, and you have like Oath of Druid. So you have your cards that matter: Oath, Sphere, Naturalize, and Blast.
This deck still doesn't make any sense to me. I just have come to accept that it's good.
I mean, it's just a tempo deck, man.
I'm gonna punch you now.
There's
no such thing as a tempo deck.
So you like, so hallmarks of a tempo deck: using all your mana every turn. Check.
I'm gonna punch you. I'm gonna punch you through this computer screen.
Win the game while your opponent still has lots of cards in hand. Check. Wasteland.
Okay. Here's the thing about the deck. It generates a lot of virtual card advantage because your opponent can't.
That's
cast
the only kind of card advantage it can actually generate. Yeah, it doesn't generate actual card advantage.
Well, no, it could have the worst deep analysis.
Yeah,
right?
I can flashback call the herd. Yeah,
just deep analysis for 2x the rate. Obviously, this is a great deck. I was mostly all the objections I had were to the original green white Cataclysm version.
Yeah.
Not that I've always liked this version.
You've liked this version more than Oath of Pollution.
The Cataclysm version has like all the same bad things about this deck: worse mana base and no proactive.
Well, no, this deck more consistently like draws and does things. Because the problem is the Cataclysm deck didn't have Mistress Factory, huge difference, and then just running Stone Rains instead of Cataclysm effects is just like also.
You can just get your plan going, right? Like sitting behind Cataclysm for 20 turns is not a plan.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe it is. Like if your opponent waltzes.
Well, this deck also just obsoleted Cataclysm because this deck crushes the Cataclysm deck. So
yeah, right. They just how many white mana are in your deck? Interesting.
Yeah, it's that is definitely a big thing.
Well, you just pin the whites; they can't swords you, and then they have the Exalted Angel stuck in their hand.
And as we've pointed out, Sabo's Web is amazing against this deck, but you have a reasonable path to stop your opponent from ever casting Sabo's Web.
Just by mana screwing them?
Yeah, and then sometimes you will draw Naturalize and everything will be okay, even though you 2-for-1 yourself, but you're just 2-for-1ing yourself all the time anyway.
But you have so much virtual card advantage, right? So like your opponent might have Sabo's Webbed you, which generated real card advantage, as well as virtual card advantage. But then like they just have a handful of cards that cost 3 or more mana that they could just never cast.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. This deck is superb. It is definitely slightly underplayed, but I think that's like a local metagame effect.
It's a $5,000 deck. I think like we're not taking into consideration certain things. Like Lanny Replenish is a $7,000.
There's
deck.
2 people who play this deck DI in New York. In Massachusetts, it's the same thing. So 2 out of 30. Yeah,
but I mean, I play it occasionally. I mean, like I own the deck,
you own the cards. I think that you're right that like, okay, so if money wasn't a thing, this would be like 10% of the metagame at LobsterCon. And because money's a thing, maybe it's going to be 5%. I think that might be less than 5%. There's going to be 200 and some players. I think
if you think this deck is less than 5%, you should absolutely play it.
Yeah. I think there's going to be 10 people who play this deck at LobsterCon because there was like 10 people who played Parfait at the last one, or maybe 14.
The way that metagames work is right. There's an equilibrium correct number of decks, right? At the various slots.
And to be clear, Pre-Modern does not have a metagame in this sense.
So but they fit together and it's like a puzzle, right? And like if your deck is viable and it's in the map of the puzzle, right? You want to be in whatever thing is the lowest is under. So if the expected amount of burn decks is supposed to be 12 and it's only 10, then burn's actually pretty good. But if it's 14, then burn's bad, right? So if you think this deck is going to be underrepresented by 50%, you should absolutely 1,000,000% play it because that's how you get more juice, right? Because like it has theoretically it has 10% of the wins, but only 5% of the players, and all those players are going to get more.
Exactly. I think you can cut like $2,000 off the price because this is pricing Legends Sylvan Library and has Mox Diamond at 800, which of course Mox Diamond is 600 or below. But this deck belongs heavier in the metagame. You can get gold board reports. This deck definitely belongs more in the metagame because it like you said, like if a deck is winning more than its representation, then it should be played more, and if a deck is losing more, it should be played less. But that's not pre-modern that we live in. People continue to play losing decks. People continue to refuse to play winning decks, and that's okay. Like that's what we're here for because winning isn't the only calculus. And honestly, it's kind of funny because like it puts me at a crazy crossroads because I'm like, I really just want to play Grotog, and my rational like grindy brain is just like, I am going to lose to these decks and I'm not going to have much to say about it. Like if I at least could like convince myself that I had a plan for Red Green Oath, then I would be like, okay, I'll just play Grotog and I'll execute the plan. But I just like don't have.
You just always lose.
Yeah, I just always lose. I always lose. Like not like sometimes win and it feels good. Like it's just like always lose. And like I'm just kind of like, how can I improve from there? Like I can just change it. And then the other thing is, in order to beat burn, I have to add a lot of Daze and Fire Ice to my deck. And those were the cards that I made my deck so much better by cutting them. So it's just kind of like, ugh, you know, what are you supposed to do?
Life's hard.
Yeah, that's
all right.
That's
So let's finish in a new fashion. I'm gonna go down from the top. All right. So we started from the bottom, went to the top. I'm gonna go down, and I'm gonna name the deck, and then you tell me if you would just heads up. Are you this deck or the Rock?
Yeah. Wait. Hold on. This is not a fun game because I'm this deck every single time.
No, you're not. No, you're not. Okay.
I will play. Yeah.
Red Green Oath.
Red Green Oath. Yes.
Red Green Oath. Okay. Blue White Dreadnaught.
Blue White Dreadnought. Yeah.
No, come on, the Rock.
No. No, I would still play Blue White Dreadnought over the Rock. It's the Rock.
No, just heads up.
Oh, does the deck beat the Rock?
Yeah,
Still Blue White Dreadnought. Okay. I have Armageddon in the sideboard, and my sideboard probably has Deep Analysis.
All right, Burn. I have Burn.
Beats the Rock.
Goblins.
Beats the Rock.
Sometimes.
Sometimes it loses, but it mostly beats the Rock.
Okay, Replenish.
Not even close.
Absolute worst. Okay. Groatog.
With accumulated knowledge, I'm pretty sure I beat the Rock.
You have regular Groatog.
I mean, that's
regular Groatog.
Probably
the herd on the other side.
Probably still 55%.
Come on, the Rock.
I mean, maybe I'll give that one. Maybe I will give 6-month-old Gat the loss against the Rock.
Okay, Terrageddon. I have Terrageddon.
Terrageddon. Yeah.
Probably the Rock though.
No, probably Terrageddon because the Weathered Wayfarer thing, Wayfarer Wasteland gets them, Geddon gets them. Call the Herd gets them. Sylvan Library gets them.
I buy it. Yeah. Elves. Come on, slightly to the Rock.
No, elves. Elves all the fucking way. I'm with all eight. I'm with all eight. Eternal Dragon, Exalted Angel.
Oh man, Exalted Angel.
Yes, please. Yeah, yes, please.
Okay. Oh, Enchantress.
Easy Enchantress.
The Rock.
Easy Enchantress.
The Rock, no?
You just draw so many cards. And you'll just replenish. Because you'll replenish, so they have to have, like, Deed Activation Haunting Echoes at the same turn.
Rock Mirror.
It's a draw.
Okay.
Go to turns.
Landstill.
Landstill beats the Rock, yeah. Okay. Especially with accumulated knowledge, but even with normal stuff.
Tide Control. I think the Rock might take this one.
No. Tide Control beats the Rock, yeah.
Okay, White Weenie variants.
Tied him. White Weenie. Okay, the Rock beats White Weenie. Yeah.
Yeah, the Rock.
I have
Stasis.
played the Rock against Stasis, and the Rock is slightly ahead of Stasis.
Really?
I played against Will, and you just have to be smart. You just have to never tap your lands. It's like all you have to do. But you're actually pretty good at keeping Stasis off the battlefield because with Pernicious Deed in play. You rock it, so you just have to get Pernicious Deed in play.
All right, Devourer has got to be Devourer.
Yeah, Devourer wins. I mean, Devourer can like top deck a win out of nowhere, but for what it's worth, Devourer can get tripped up by Duress Therapy.
I mean, but it's also a Sabo's Web against the Dust Bowl.
Yeah. I mean, the 4 Sabo's Web these days obviously is a big help.
And this deck's got Factor Fiction. I've got Devourer on this side. Mono Black Clerics. Barf. I don't want to. I don't know. I don't want to know.
Probably the Rock for the same reasons that it beats White Weenie. Yeah.
Same as Zombies.
Yeah, probably for the same reasons.
Oh, no comment on Storm. I don't want. No comment on Storm. Breakfast. Oh wow, Breakfast. Yep. Hermit.
Yep.
Honor White Control. It might be the Rock.
Still an Eternal Dragon deck. But it does have a lot of stuff that gets deeded. So maybe just 51% instead of 55.
All right. Survival Madness got to be the Rock.
I have one from the Rock side because Stanley timed out.
So the Rock. All right. So you heard it here first. The Rock is very viable. It's live against a lot of the decks that we talked about today.
I don't know if that's the conclusion I would make, but yeah, sure.
And that's Lanny's last statement was that he won against the last deck we talked about.
It would have been a draw in turns. I will update these deck lists with what I think are the best versions. So I should probably this Blue-White Dreadnought list looks still good, but I think I should update the Goblins list as you pointed out, and I'll make the Goblins list not an Ancient Tomb Goblins list. and I need you to ship me the updated Tide list because, well, I guess I'll just use Oscars. That's still fine. Need to make some updates to replenish. Need to make some updates to Grotog. I'm excited for LobsterCon. It's going to be an amazing time. Do you have any? Okay, so let's talk about LobsterCon VIPs. Sam Black, very excited to have him. He'll be there. David Williams, very excited to have him.
David Williams is going to be there?
Yes, he is.
Oh my God.
He is registered.
Oh man, this is changing my outlook.
Yeah, it's just moving you down.
He left me on red. So my son was just like, "Oh, blah blah blah. Isn't there a Magic player?" This is like because he was watching MasterChef or like he studies poker. I'm like, I'm actually quite good friends with this guy, right? And he's just like, "Shut up." And I'm like, so I texted him, and he left me on red.
He left you.
Like, you're making me look bad in front of my son, and he's actually like a good friend of mine. But the text I sent him was lame. It was just like, my son doesn't believe I know you.
Oh yeah, that's it. So then he just did it for the bit. Like then he actually like you should have just been like, "Hey man, what's up?" Like long. And then
he's just like responding to my connections tweets.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
Like on Twitter,
he's like, I got blue first. I'm hyped to finally meet him. I don't know much about the guy. I do know that he likes cooking and poker and Magic, and I love cooking and poker and Magic, so I feel like we'd get along swimmingly. And
I like cooking, poker, and Magic. You mean he is a Master Chef, World Series of Poker bracelet finalist and winner, and Grand Prix champion, and multiple Pro Tour top 8 competitor.
Yeah, and I am a pre-modern Super Series winner.
Aficionado.
I made the best hamburger Michael J has ever had.
It was good hamburger.
And I am up about 4 buy-ins on 4 sessions in Vegas. So
nice.
So some might say that I'm coming for the.
So if you come for the king, don't miss.
Mike, what deck are you going to play at LobsterCon?
That's a painful question. If it were tomorrow and I could go, I would play the red deck.
Nice. I think I honestly, I just hate the idea that I'm gonna get 5th through 8th. That's like the only part I don't like, because I'm pretty sure like odds to top 8, red's got to be the highest, but odds to top 1, red's got to be the lowest. How is that true though? Like that can't be true mathematically, but that's how it feels.
I mean, that's not true.
I don't think red deck top 1 seems super far away. Maybe there's a mental block for me where I can't play non-Lanny replenish lists, and Lanny replenish lists are empirically worse than non-Lanny replenish, like lists that don't have seal cleansing. I probably won't play Mox Diamond. I'll still consider it. But maybe the Exalted Angel sideboard plan is overrated and I need to get off it, et cetera, or not play 4 or 3. Like maybe I'll just play 2 or something. Maybe
no, Exalted Angel's good. It's a max bract. People don't know about it. You get them. If people do know about it, you random them.
Well, the thing is, I have to choose between Exalted Angel or Sabo's Web with how my deck's constructed.
No, just like play like 2 Sabo's Web main and then just cut 2 nonsense.
There's no nonsense in the deck.
Just don't play 4 Tide.
I already don't play 4 Tide. I play 2 Tide.
Oh wow!
I can't fit. I can't fit the goods into the deck.
Oh wow!
Well, okay. So the only reason why I wouldn't play Sabo's Web is that I would happily play 26 lands, and if you have 26 lands, eventually you will just be able to cast Replenish. Like you'll just be able to cast Replenish, and that's all you have to do.
These are famous last words, Lanny.
I know. That's why I'm in such a tough spot, because I don't want to play Sabo's Web. I hate playing Sabo's Web in my deck that I'm just like, okay, this card.
So hear me out. 4 Sabo's Web, cut Seal of Cleansing, play Dismantling Blow. Oh. So then, and if you're in the bad Sabo's Web matchup, you just Dismantling Blow and Factor Fiction.
Oh my god! And then once I get to 7 mana, I can Tide Dismantling Blow.
Yeah, it's great.
Oh my god. Okay,
but you probably wouldn't do that on 7 because then you wouldn't get the kicker. So maybe wait till 9.
Yeah, well, what I'll do is I'll do Tide, and then I'll pass the turn, and then on my upkeep with the Fading Trigger on the stack, I'll blow kick. Yeah,
that's excellent.
Blow kicker, draw cards.
Yeah, excellent.
Tide them out.
That's why you've got all the angles.
Yeah. Red Green Oath. Dismantling Blow, Saw's Web. Maybe I should cut the manlands from my blue white control list, and then.
Oh my god, you've snapped.
Yeah, I'm just gone.
You literally snapped.
Yep. I'm in the deep end now. I am in the upside down. Red Green Oath. God, it feels so clean. Like a lot of the hands are keepable. Not very many of the hands
Lanny,
that don't contain.
If you think that the deck is supposed to be 10% of the field and it's going to be 5% of the field, you should just play it because it's going to have 2x the win expectation.
Well, no, so on my podcast, I'm going to say like this is what people should do, but like I'm going to let vibes influence my personal decision because like, I know that I'm not comfortable with the deck despite the fact that it is relatively speaking quite easy to play.
Simple. All the cards are sorcery speed. You look at your hand and be like, oh, did I have 5 mana sources? Like, can I play a busto thing on turn 1 or 2?
I am the kind of player
if not mulligan.
Look, I know it's stupid, but and I know it's a leak, but if I'm staring at my battlefield and I can activate Mishra's Factory or I can Rishon import them, I'm pretty sure I'm just going to make the wrong decision like 60% of the time.
That is a problem because that's the only way that the deck operates.
I know. But I just I get confronted with all the time. I sit, I tank. I want to do a whole another episode on tanking because I have to be the worst at tanking in the world. Like all my success is on sheer deck power and intuition because once I start tanking, I start losing. But I sit, I tank, and I'm just like, I don't know what to do. Because there's no heuristic. Like whether or not you should port or attack with factory is just always dependent on the situation. You have to make a read. You have to randomize. You have to figure out their range, and it's a tough one. And I hate being put in spots like that. I would rather look at my hand. It's got counterspell. It's got accumulated knowledge. Pass the turn with UU up and decide on their end step. Just do that for the whole game. That's easier. That is easier to do.
Then you should play a different deck.
All roads lead back home.
Dude, you're the best Grotog player. I think that not top 8ing a tournament one time is not a great. So 2 times ever I did this in my life. I either missed top 8 or I had no wins at all on Saturday. Played the same 75 on Sunday and won the tournament. Did it twice.
Yeah, I mean, so that's my idea is that I would play Grotog in the side event no matter what if I didn't play it in the main event. And but yeah, I do want to bring all glory to Tog. So I do have a chip on my shoulder, so I do want to represent. But I got to be honest, nobody remembers who went X and 2 at last year's LobsterCon. People barely remember the people who were 5th through 8th. So
conveniently, they remember 1st, 2nd, and 3rd. I don't know about 4th.
The top
4,
4.
2nd, 3rd.
No, they remember the top 4. The top 4 was, I mean,
Sheldon, Ethai, you, and Flint. Yeah, obviously, everybody.
Well, because Phil posted his Twitter thread, and it was like the stories of each of the players in each of the top 4 players was also the storylines were exciting, so that added to it. Not to say that the other players didn't have their story. Like obviously, Smith's the player who bought the Blue Red Dreadnaught deck, the other Landstill player, the other Blue White Dreadnaught player, like those. Those are all stories. But yeah, I mean the plot armor, sort of like the
if you
drama.
Give Ethai Mono Blue, I think you have to give him like 3 Mishra's Factory.
I don't want to confuse him with Mishra's Factories.
You think he doesn't know how to operate a Mishra's Factory?
Yeah, I just want to give him...
He's an engineer.
I mean, he's a factory.
He's literally an engineer.
So he must be good at factory.
Like,
okay, I mean, I guess so.
I mean, you're so the thing is, like, you're a little cold to meddling mage if you don't have...
I'm actually... Well, so I'll just go with the powder keg plan. Powder keg's like pretty good because it'll take out multiple meddling mages.
All right.
And boomerang, reality ripple, like Like, if your plan is to jam, like you're already like your plan is to jam, right? So like if your opponent goes meddling mage, that's the same as like if your opponent goes like other sorts of interaction. If your plan is to jam, if your plan is to go long, then meddling mage is a problem. So I thought it was very astute of Juan Sanz, who won the South American, to just not play powder keg. And I don't know if his plan was to jam, and he didn't cover it when he was on Will's podcast. But like, if your plan is to jam, like some of the time you'll catch the meddling mage with the daze. Some of the time you'll catch it with the counterspell, and some of the time you'll already have a Dreadnaught on the table. So like, why are we playing Mishra's Factory powder keg? Just jam. Like, just, I mean, like,
all right.
Factory dies to Wasteland. You know, it gets held down by Sabo's Web. You can't even sideboard in Sabo's
all right,
Web.
Fine. You got me at Sabo's Web. Final statement. The Rock is super viable.
Mike is bringing burn. I am either going to take my medicine and play Oath or Replenish, or refuse my medicine and die in a blazing salvo playing Grotog. Either that or dodge all my bad matchups. I mean, it could happen.
It's gonna be tough dodging red green Oath if you want to be top 1.
Yeah, it's gonna be tough dodging burn if I want to be top anything. But I believe that it can happen. Maybe I'll just play 4 dazes and just.
I think that if your plan is to dodge burn, you should just cut all the chills.
Oh yeah, for sure.
No, for real.
Yeah, no. I'm
like
in.
if you're just like, just like mulliganing to 4 and not getting.
No. That's horrible. That was my plan. So my plan was to cut. My plan, if I was going to dodge burn, because Mold of Chill is not even a good plan. So my plan was like, if I want to fight burn, then I play max days, lots of fire ice, lots of Call of the Herd, lots of Hydro Blast in the sideboard.
You could still play blasts, which are great against goblins.
Good against goblins, and then once I have blasts, I can cut Engineered Plague, and I can play 2 to 3 Pyroclasm instead of Engineered Plague, and then I will never, ever, ever lose to goblins. And I can bring in Pyroclasm for the burn matchup, where it's totally reasonable to pick up on.
So it sounds like you have a plan, and you should be back on.
No. The plan sucks. The plan involves. The plan involves still like sometimes losing to Curse Scroll. Yeah.
The Rock is totally viable. Don't play Mishra's Factory. Grotog may or may not work.
Yeah, Grotog might be. The wheels might have fell off Grotog somewhere in between last week and this week, or the week before and last week. But I still love the deck, and if I don't play it in the main event, I'm definitely playing it in the side. Shout out to the new members who got into the secret Discord and supported us on Coffee. You don't have to support us on Coffee.
You should. If you want to be in the secret Discord.
If you do, I would try to like.
It's actually not a secret Discord. We've told everybody about it at this point.
Yeah. There's like multiple secret Discords. This is the supporter Discord. The one of the privileges of the supporter Discord is that like if you ask me publicly what I think, I will like be really nice to you, and then if you like pay me money, I will like bully you. And so Sonny regularly chimes in with his ideas, and I'm like, Sonny, that doesn't work. You're not right. Like whatever. And that's the benefit of being a member of the Spike Colony Coffee. New stuff coming up on YouTube. Check out Fran's YouTube. Really hyped to see Blue-White Dreadnaught content. Lan was on All Things Considered, 250th episode. It's a 3-hour super banger. We love Lan, and wishing him a speedy recovery. And probably will be seeing him at LobsterCon. He is practically locked in. So this is the most exciting time of the year in pre-modern. Never lose sight of what's important. Be sure to have fun out there. If you are incensed by us telling you that your favorite deck is unplayable, don't be, because I don't mind if you play it, and I think you can, You could just prove us wrong. Prove us wrong. I know. Actually, I'm into that. I mean, Ponza won. Like Ponza. Top one. Mono red, Ponza, just pillages, Grimlock, like just do that. Do that, and we will not shut up, but we will golf clap. Love Spike Colony. Bye. Love Mike.